This time, let your brother have a baby. You can have another one later. I told my parents I was pregnant. Then my mom said something shocking. Zach and his wife Rosie, who can't have kids, want us to give them our baby for adoption. My parents always favored Zach and ignored me. The happy future I imagined with my first baby turned into sadness. I'm Olivia. I've been married to Walt for 3 years. We're happy and thinking about having a baby soon. But I haven't been close to my family because of issues with my parents and brother Zach. In our family house, my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie all live together. Zach has been praised since he was little, excelling in school and landing a job at a big company, which he'll probably take over from Dad. Our parents have always adored him. I, on the other hand, didn't stand out academically and wasn't as good-looking, so I never felt that close to our parents. I often felt left out and lonely because Zach got so much attention. Mom especially favored him, always by his side and hardly ever paying attention to me. When she did talk to me, it was usually criticism. Zach followed Mom's lead and didn't treat me well either, so we never really got along. I felt like I didn't belong at home and became more and more isolated. Because of that, right after finishing high school, I moved out. My parents didn't seem bothered when I told them I was leaving. If anything, they seemed happy about it. After leaving, I found a job, and 3 years later, I married Walt, who was in the same class as me. I wanted to start my own family and find peace away from my parents' influence. I only go back home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I don't really want to, but my parents insist. They care a lot about appearances, and it wouldn't look good if their daughter never visited. So I put up with it and visit twice a year. I reluctantly went back this Thanksgiving, but my mother was as distant as ever. "You and your husband are still not that impressive," she said, dampening the festive atmosphere. She started being sarcastic right away. She only called us back to say such things. If she's going to be like this, she shouldn't even bother calling, I thought, trying to ignore her sarcasm. But she kept going. "We're worried about you. You two live so modestly. We always think you'll come asking for money. My family is pretty wealthy, but since I left, I've never asked for financial help. Walt and I manage fine on our own earnings. We even send them proper birthday gifts." "We would never do that," I quickly replied to her unfounded accusation. Then she said, "But you two are still earning modestly, right?" and turned to look at Walt next to me. "Walt, you're still at that detective agency, right? How long do you plan to stick with that questionable job? Aren't you embarrassed?" Indeed, Walt works as a detective, something she always mocks. She sees detective work as sketchy and inferior to regular jobs. As Walt tried to explain his job to her, Zach jumped in. "Mom, there's no point in even listening to that. Detective work is shady, something nobody respectable does. It's a job for people beneath us. The pay must be peanuts compared to mine," showing off his superiority. Zach shared her disdain for detective work, a sentiment we've heard since we got married. Walt stayed quiet, but I felt upset that his job was being dismissed outright. Walt has always been my support, understanding what my family is like since our college days. That's why he always joins me when we visit my parents, not wanting to leave me alone. Even though he knows it won't be pleasant, I still feel guilty about it. Like many visits before, this one ended on a sour note. Around that time, we decided to live modestly together, unaffected by my family's opinions. Something amazing happened in our 3rd year of marriage. I found out I was pregnant. I was thrilled to be expecting our first child. Knowing how my parents always put me down, I felt like I had to share the news with them, so I went to our family home to tell them. It had been a while since I visited outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie were all there, but their reaction to my announcement caught me off guard. When my mother heard the news, she suddenly got loud. "How could you say that in front of Zach?" Her response was unexpected. I wasn't expecting congratulations, but this was different. I was confused by her mentioning Zach, and when I looked puzzled, she dropped a bombshell. "Zach and Rosie can't have kids. How could you be so insensitive?" I had no clue they were dealing with infertility. Shocked by her words, I glanced at them. Zach seemed uncomfortable, and Rosie looked down sadly. "You're having a baby before Zach. If it wasn't for Rosie, this wouldn't be happening." My mother sighed dramatically, looking between Rosie and me. Seeing this, Zach stepped in. "Rosie already feels bad enough. Don't be too hard on her, Mom." I was surprised to hear him defend Rosie. From what I knew from my visits, Zach wasn't usually that supportive of her. "You're really kind, Zach." Then Zach said something that made me pause. "Rosie, if it weren't for being married to Zach, you would have been divorced by now." My mother shot Rosie a glare. Maybe despite everything, Zach does care about his wife. As I watched Zach calm our mother down, I thought about what had just happened. Well, I shared my news, so I should head home, I said, feeling the tension rise because of my announcement. But then my mother said something unbelievable. "Give your baby to Zach." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Give my baby to Zach. Why should I? I can have another baby if I want to. Just because Rosie can't have children doesn't mean I should give mine away. That's unfair and ridiculous. When I refused, my mother argued, "This is our first grandchild. It should be raised by us. Zach will take over the company, so we should raise the baby." Her words made me furious. She was planning to take my unborn child just to ensure a successor for our father's company. She talked about adoption like she had it all planned out, but I was too angry to listen. I was already irritated, and then Zach said something shocking. "Well, since Rosie can't have kids, it's good for her that you got pregnant. You're finally doing something for the family." I couldn't believe it, but Zach seemed to agree with my mom. Even Dad, who usually stays quiet, nodded along. It felt like the whole family was claiming my baby as their own. I couldn't believe how casually Zach spoke to his own wife like that, acting like it was no big deal. I realized there was no point in arguing further, so I left right away. All they said was, "Give us an answer next time you come," and didn't even come to say goodbye. Rosie, who must have been hurt, silently watched me leave. Even after I got home, I couldn't shake off my anger. Instead of celebrating my pregnancy, they made this unreasonable demand. I felt gloomy thinking about the future. They'd probably keep pushing for adoption even after the baby was born. When I told Walt what happened after he got back from work, he was shocked too. Even he couldn't find the words to respond. He knows my family, but this was beyond belief. A few days later, we were surprised by an unexpected visitor at home. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" "It's rare to see you alone," I said to Rosie. She looked tired, with dull skin and messy hair. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at us. "Olivia, I'm really sorry about what happened the other day," she said, referring to when I announced my pregnancy. It wasn't her fault, but she seemed burdened by the unreasonable demands my family had made. Then she said she had something important to discuss. "What is it?" I asked, inviting her in to talk. What she told me was shocking, and my anger flared up again. Trying to stay calm, she shared a significant truth with me. Walt had been quietly listening to our conversation and then chimed in with something equally astonishing and infuriating. Rosie's tears started again as she listened to Walt. With this new information from both of them, I made a decision. I vowed to myself to hold my parents and Zach accountable, to settle past grievances and seek justice. 3 months later, with my belly starting to show, Walt and I visited my family home. My parents, Zach and Rosie, were there. Without even a greeting, my mother asked, "You've decided to give the baby to Zach, right?" It seemed like she couldn't think of anything else. As I've said before, that's not happening. I replied, but my parents glared at me as if they couldn't accept it. "No matter what you say, we're taking that baby. Stop being stubborn," my mother said, clearly angered by my refusal. Zach and my father just watched, not intervening. "No matter how much you insist, I'll never give the baby away. But I came here today to show you something." "Is that okay, Rosie?" I asked, looking at Rosie, who nodded silently. Rosie intends to divorce Zach, and this is why. I pulled out some photos from an envelope I had brought. That was the reason for my visit today. Zach was speechless as he looked at the photos. They clearly showed him kissing another woman and entering a hotel. Undeniable proof of his infidelity. "Shocked to have been caught," he muttered. "Who took these photos?" Our parents, standing next to Zach, looked bewildered, their gaze shifting between him and me. They probably had no idea about his affair. "It was Walt who took these," I said. Walt, who had been silently observing, explained how he had come across the photos. As a detective, he had seen Zach with another woman while working on a case. Out of curiosity, he investigated further and found out about Zach's affair. The decisive moment was captured in those photos, as Zach thought he had cleverly hidden his affair. He was stunned and speechless. "Adultery is grounds for divorce. You need to compensate Rosie properly," I said, breaking the tense silence. But Zach, instead of apologizing, blamed Rosie for his actions. "Yeah, it's your fault, Rosie. You're so incompetent. I'm just having a little fun outside," he said, with our mother backing him up, trying to shift the blame away from Zach. Seeing Rosie treated like I once was made me feel terribly sorry for her. So I decided to confront my family to save both of us. I pushed them further by pointing out Zach's faults. "Zach, you mocked Walt, but a professional detective's skills are extraordinary. Evidence kept piling up as soon as he started investigating. And we found out something shocking about your mistress," I said, watching my parents tense up, wondering what would come next. "The woman you're seeing seems to be the daughter of a mafia boss," I revealed, watching Zach freeze in shock. He must not have known that. My mother screamed, "What? Is that true?" Upon hearing the revelation, she collapsed to the ground, covering her face, while my father looked terrified. "Zach, you were pretending to be single, right?" I asked, and Zach started to panic. "No, I didn't know either." Our parents, who had been so authoritative just moments ago, were now completely bewildered by this unexpected revelation. Then Rosie spoke up amidst the confusion. "You didn't just deceive your mistress, did you?" Her words brought tension back into the room. She repeated what she had told me during her visit. "You're infertile, aren't you?" Zach's face betrayed a look of realization. Our parents stared at him in shock. They had blamed Rosie for their infertility issues, but the truth was it was Zach himself. "Did you know, Rosie?" That was all he could manage to say. Our stunned parents struggled to find their next words, visibly shaken by the revelation. Rosie delivered the final blow. I found out accidentally while cleaning the room. She had stumbled upon his infertility diagnosis hidden in his desk drawer. Unable to admit it to his loving parents, Zach had kept this fact a secret and blamed Rosie for their infertility. Believing his words, our parents had unfairly blamed Rosie. His protective comments about Rosie when I announced my pregnancy were probably driven by his guilt over the issue. Blamed for something she had no control over, Rosie suffered every day. As the conversation turned to the topic of taking my child, Rosie spoke with a calm, unchanged expression. Meanwhile, my parents, just learning the shocking truth, were in a panic. "To think Zach will never have a child, that's just," my mother began, despairing at the thought of not having a grandchild. But then she turned her hysterical anger towards him. "You knew it was your fault, yet you blamed your wife. Did you cheat because you knew you were infertile? How could my son stoop so low? Oh dear, why did this happen?" She vented her frustration at him. Finally, Zach spoke, offering a pitiful explanation. "I was shocked to find out I was infertile. I felt guilty for not giving you a grandchild. When I found out Olivia was pregnant with a boy, it just seemed convenient." His words filled me with contempt. Pushing aside my anger, I delivered the final blow to the three of them. "Your selfish actions hurt Rosie and me. And Zach, you had an affair with such a dangerous person. Mom and Dad, you'll have to face the consequences of your actions. You've hurt so many people, now it's time to face the music." My words prompted them to apologize, their earlier bravado gone. "Where did that confidence go when you asked me to give up my son?" I looked at them with disdain, feeling as though I was looking at garbage. Beside me, Rosie remained silent, her gaze fixed ahead, silently conveying the depth of her sorrow. Tough times lay ahead for Zach and my parents. When the father of Zach's mistress discovered the affair, they were summoned and forced to apologize repeatedly. Despite ending the affair, Zach had to pay a hefty compensation for deceiving the woman. The amount was staggering, teaching them the harsh consequences of getting involved with such people. As a result, our family home descended into chaos. My father had to step down as company president due to the public scandal, and my mother became isolated, shunned by the neighbors, and withdrawing into herself. Their relationship became hostile, constantly arguing over Zach's actions. Zach lost his job after the scandal reached his company, and to add to his troubles, his divorce with Rosie was finalized. Struggling with unemployment and financial burdens, Zach found himself trapped in a cycle of relentless work. Around the time Rosie successfully left the family home, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both the baby and I were in good health, and I reveled in the joy of welcoming new life. Our family of three embarked on happy days together. Eventually, Walt and I made the decision to sever all ties with my family. Although I have been torn about cutting off contact with my parents and brother, that incident made me realize it was the best decision for my son's well-being. Despite their absence, I have found solace and love in my irreplaceable family. From now on, I choose to cherish only my precious family.
I slammed the door of my office, the vibration rattling the framed blueprints on the wall. Another day, another argument with a client who thought they knew better than a professional architect with 15 years of experience. I sank into my chair, rubbing my temples. A soft knock interrupted my brooding. "Rose? Everything all right in there?" I sighed. "Come in, Leonard." The door creaked open, and Leonard's salt and pepper head poked through. "Brought you some coffee. Figured you might need it after that spirited discussion." I couldn't help but smile. Leonard had been my mentor when I first started at the firm, and now, even as colleagues, he still looked out for me. "Thanks, Leonard. You're a lifesaver." He set the mug on my desk, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "Want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "Same old story. Client thinks because they watched a few home renovation shows, they're suddenly experts in structural engineering." Leonard chuckled. "Ah, the joys of our profession. You handled it well, though. I was impressed." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because I feel like I just got run over by a dump truck full of unrealistic expectations." He leaned against my desk, his voice softening. "Rose, you're one of the best architects I've ever worked with. Don't let one difficult client shake your confidence." I felt a warmth spread through my chest at his words. Leonard always knew just what to say. Sometimes I wondered if the moment was broken by my phone buzzing. I glanced at the screen, expecting another work email. Instead, I saw an unfamiliar number. "Everything okay?" Leonard asked, noticing my frown. "Yeah, just a weird text." I showed him the message. "The truth about your parents will shock you. Meet me at Riverside Park, 7 p.m. tonight if you want answers." Leonard's brow furrowed. "That's concerning. Are you going to go?" I bit my lip, conflicted. "I don't know. It's probably just some prank or scam, right?" "Probably," Leonard agreed, but he didn't sound convinced. "Still, maybe you should bring someone with you just in case." I shook my head. "No, I need to handle this myself." The truth was, my relationship with my parents had always been complicated. If there really was some hidden truth, I needed to face it alone. Leonard looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just squeezed my shoulder. "All right, but promise me you'll be careful. And call me if you need anything, okay?" I nodded, grateful for his concern. As he left my office, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change dramatically. The rest of the day crawled by in a haze of meetings and phone calls. By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, my stomach was in knots. I found myself standing at the edge of Riverside Park, scanning the faces of passers-by, wondering which one held the key to my past. Rose Thompson? I spun around to see a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a folder tucked under her arm. "Yes, that's me," I said cautiously. She thrust the folder at me. "Everything you need to know is in here. I'm sorry, but your parents aren't who you think they are." Before I could respond, she turned and disappeared into the evening crowd, leaving me clutching a folder that suddenly felt as heavy as my racing heart. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read. The first words made my blood run cold. DNA test results. No genetic match found between Rose Thompson and her presumed parents. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Who was I? And more importantly, who were the people I had called Mom and Dad for the past 35 years? The revelation about my parents hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion and betrayal. For days, I wandered through life in a daze, barely able to focus on work. Leonard kept shooting me concerned glances, but I couldn't bring myself to share the truth. How could I, when I barely understood it myself? It was in this fragile state that my friend Megan dragged me to a charity event for urban development. "You need to get out, Rose," she insisted. "Meet some new people, maybe even a handsome stranger." I rolled my eyes but allowed her to pull me along. As we entered the crowded ballroom, I felt overwhelmed by the sea of unfamiliar faces. That's when I quite literally bumped into him. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, mortified as I watched my champagne splash onto his crisp white shirt. He laughed, a warm, rich sound that made me look up. "No worries. I was looking for an excuse to ditch this monkey suit anyway." His easy smile and twinkling blue eyes caught me off guard. "I'm Jake," he said, extending his hand. "Urban planner and occasional champagne magnate." Despite myself, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. "Rose, architect and accidental drink thrower. We fell into easy conversation, discussing our shared passion for sustainable city design. For the first time in days, I felt the weight on my chest lighten. "So, Rose," Jake said, leaning in conspiratorially, "what do you say we ditch this stuffy party and grab a real drink? I know a great little place around the corner." I hesitated, glancing at Megan, who was giving me an emphatic thumbs up from across the room. You know what? Why not? The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. Jake and I saw each other almost every day, our connection deepening with each shared laugh and passionate debate about urban planning. He was kind, intelligent, and seemed to genuinely care about me. One Sunday afternoon, Jake invited me to a family barbecue. "I want you to meet them," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "They're going to love you." As we pulled up to a charming suburban home, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. My own family was a mess. Parents who weren't really my parents, a sister I barely spoke to. What if Jake's family saw right through me? But the moment we stepped through the door, I was enveloped in warmth. Jake's mother, Linda, pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, Rose, we've heard so much about you. Welcome, sweetheart." Jake's father, Robert, shook my hand with a twinkle in his eye. "So you're the brilliant architect who's stolen our boy's heart, eh?" And then there was Ella, Jake's younger sister. She bounded up to me, full of energy. "Rose, Jake says you're amazing at your job. I'm thinking about studying architecture too. Can I pick your brain sometime?" As the afternoon wore on, I found myself relaxing, drawn into the easy banter and genuine affection of Jake's family. It was everything I'd always longed for, but never had. Later, as Jake and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset, he turned to me with a serious expression. "Rose, I know we haven't known each other long, but I think you might be the one. I've never felt this way about anyone before." My heart raced. Part of me wanted to throw caution to the wind and dive headfirst into this fairy tale. But the other part, the part still reeling from the revelation about my parents, held back. "Jake, I hesitated, torn between my growing feelings and my fear of being hurt again. "There's something I need to tell you. About my family." He squeezed my hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. You're part of our family now, Rose." As I looked into his earnest eyes, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation. Could I really trust this perfect picture? Or was I setting myself up for another heartbreak? The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of happiness. Jake and I grew closer, and I found myself spending more time with his family, especially Ella. One sunny afternoon, we sat in her room, surrounded by college brochures and architecture magazines. "Rose, I can't thank you enough for helping me with this," Ella said, her eyes shining with excitement. "I never thought I'd actually have a shot at getting into a top architecture program." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "You've got real talent, Ella, and determination. That's half the battle right there." She bit her lip, hesitating. "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded, curious. "Jake mentioned you don't talk to your family much. I hope you don't mind me asking, but why?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't told Jake's family about the DNA test results yet. "It's complicated," I said softly. "I recently found out some unsettling information about my parents. I'm still processing it." Ella's eyes widened. "Oh, Rose, I'm so sorry, but you know you have us now, right? You're like the big sister I never had." Her words touched me deeply, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Thank you, Ella. That means more than you know." As I left Ella's room, I nearly collided with Jake in the hallway. His face lit up when he saw me, and before I could say a word, he dropped to one knee. My heart stopped. "Rose," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I know this might seem fast, but when you know, you know. You've brought so much joy and love into my life. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to spin around me. Part of me wanted to scream yes immediately, but the other part, the part still reeling from the revelation about my parents, hesitated. "Jake, I don't know what to say," I stammered. His face fell slightly, but he rallied. "You don't have to answer right now. Just think about it, okay?" I nodded, my mind whirling. The next day at work, I was still in a daze when Leonard knocked on my office door. "Rose, you okay? You seem distracted." I looked up at him, suddenly realizing I needed to talk to someone. "Jake proposed?" I blurted out. Leonard's face went through a series of rapid emotions before settling on a forced smile. "That's wonderful, isn't it?" I sighed. I don't know, Leonard. It's all happening so fast, and with everything going on with my family. He sat down across from me, his eyes filled with concern. Rose, you know you can always talk to me, right? About anything. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted outside my office. The door burst open, and Jake strode in, followed by a crowd of our coworkers. Surprise! They all shouted. I stared in shock as Jake grinned and held up a banner that read, "Congratulations on your engagement." I know you haven't officially said yes yet, Jake said, his eyes twinkling. But I figured a little encouragement couldn't hurt. As our colleagues swarmed around us offering congratulations, I felt overwhelmed. Jake slipped a ring onto my finger, and I stared at it, feeling a mix of elation and panic. I caught Leonard's eye across the room. He looked stricken, and in that moment I realized there was more to his feelings for me than just friendship. Jake's arm around me tightened, and he whispered in my ear, "I can't wait to start our life together, Rose, you, me, and my family. It's going to be perfect." As the impromptu party swirled around me, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. On one side was the promise of the family I'd always dreamed of. On the other, a nagging doubt that wouldn't let go. What had I gotten myself into? And more importantly, how was I going to get out if I needed to? The whirlwind of wedding preparations swept me off my feet. Between dress fittings, venue tours, and endless decisions about flowers and centerpieces, I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about the nagging doubts in the back of my mind. One evening, as Jake and I collapsed onto the couch after another marathon planning session, he dropped a bombshell. "Honey, I've been thinking," he said, his voice casual. "What if we moved in with my parents after the wedding?" I sat up straight, my heart racing. "What? Why would we do that?" Jake shrugged. "It makes sense financially. We could save for a down payment on our own place faster. Plus, Mom and Dad would love having us around." I tried to keep the panic out of my voice. "But Jake, we're starting our life together. Don't you want some privacy?" He took my hand, his eyes earnest. "Rose, my family is everything to me. I thought you understood that. Don't you want to be part of it?" Guilt washed over me. Jake's family had been so welcoming, so loving. How could I deny them? And yet the thought of giving up my independence made me feel physically ill. I need to think about it," I stammered. Jake's face fell. "What's there to think about? Don't you trust me?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leonard. "Hope wedding plans are going well. Miss seeing you around the office. Coffee soon?" I quickly put the phone away, feeling a pang of something. Regret? Longing? I pushed the thought aside. The next day I found myself at Jake's parents' house, ostensibly to discuss wedding details with his mother, Linda. As we sat in the kitchen, surrounded by bridal magazines, she broached the subject. "Jake told us about his idea," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, Rose, we'd be so thrilled to have you here. You're already like a daughter to us." I forced a smile. "It's a big decision, Linda. I'm not sure." She waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. Family takes care of family. You'll see. It'll be wonderful." Just then, Ella burst into the kitchen, her face alight with excitement. "Rose, I got in. The architecture program at State U." I jumped up, genuinely thrilled for her. "Ella, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." As we hugged, I caught Linda's eye. Her smile seemed calculating. "You see, Rose, you've already had such an impact on our Ella. Imagine how much more you could do living here." I felt trapped, cornered by their expectations, my conflicting desires. That night, as I tossed and turned in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control of my own life. The next morning, I arrived at work early, desperate for some peace. To my surprise, Leonard was already there, concern etched on his face. "Rose," he said softly, "what's going on? You've seemed off lately." Something in his gentle tone broke through my defenses. Before I knew it, I was spilling everything. The DNA test, Jake's proposal, the pressure to move in with his family. Leonard listened without judgment, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he took a deep breath. "Rose, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. You deserve to be happy. Really, truly happy, not just going along with what others want for you." His words hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized I'd been so caught up in trying to please everyone else, I'd lost sight of what I truly wanted. "I need to talk to Jake," I said, standing up abruptly. "I need to be honest with him and with myself." As I headed for the door, Leonard called out, "Rose, whatever happens, I'm here for you." I nodded, my heart pounding. It was time to take control of my own story. I stood outside Jake's parents' house, my heart pounding. After my conversation with Leonard, I knew I had to confront Jake about my doubts. But as I reached for the doorbell, I heard raised voices from inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept around to the open kitchen window. "Can't believe how perfectly this is working out," Linda's voice drifted out. "Once Rose moves in, we'll have access to her entire salary." I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. Jake's voice responded, sounding uncertain. "Mom, I'm not sure about this. Rose trusts us. It feels wrong to." "Don't be naive, Jake," Robert cut in. "This is our chance to finally get out of debt. Your little architect girlfriend is our ticket to financial freedom." My world tilted on its axis. The family I thought had welcomed me with open arms had been plotting to use me all along. Ella's voice piped up, "But what about Rose's career? She's so talented, and she's been helping me." Linda scoffed. "Oh, please, once she's part of this family, her career will be the least of our concerns. She'll be too busy taking care of us." I stumbled back from the window, bile rising in my throat. How could I have been so blind? The warmth, the acceptance, it had all been a carefully crafted lie. In a daze, I made my way back to my car. As I drove home, my mind raced. What was I going to do? The wedding was in 2 weeks. Invitations had been sent, deposits paid. And Jake? Had he been in on this from the beginning? Back in my apartment, I paced restlessly. I couldn't marry Jake, not now. But how could I call off the wedding without revealing what I'd overheard? Would anyone even believe me? My phone buzzed incessantly, texts from Jake, Linda, Ella. I ignored them all. Instead, I found myself dialing a different number. "Leonard, I need your help." His voice was steady, calming. "I'm here, Rose. What do you need?" "Can you meet me at the courthouse tomorrow? There's something I need to do." The next morning, Leonard and I stood in line at the marriage license office. My hands shook as I filled out the cancellation form. "Are you sure about this, Rose?" Leonard asked gently. I nodded, fighting back tears. "I have to." "You didn't hear them, Leonard. They were planning to use me, to take my money. It was all a lie." As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new anxiety. What would happen when Jake and his family found out? My phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Rose, where have you been? We've all been worried sick." I steeled myself. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you meet me at the park?" An hour later, I sat on a bench watching Jake approach. His face lit up when he saw me, and for a moment I almost wavered. But then I remembered the cold calculation in Linda's voice, the way they had discussed using me like I was nothing more than a means to an end. "Jake," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "There's something I need to tell you." As I spoke, I saw the color drain from his face. By the time I finished, he looked like a stranger. "Rose, I don't know what to say. I swear I didn't know about this." I stood up, my decision solidified. "It doesn't matter, Jake. I can't be part of a family built on lies and manipulation. The wedding is off." As I walked away, leaving Jake stunned on the bench, I felt a mix of grief and relief. The fairy tale was over, but maybe now I could start writing my own story, one where I was the author of my own happiness. I stood in the driveway of Jake's family home, my suitcases at my feet. Despite everything I'd overheard, despite canceling the marriage license in secret, I found myself moving in with them. Jake had been so apologetic, swearing he knew nothing about his family's plans. He begged me to give them a chance, to let him prove his love was real. And like a fool, I agreed. Linda threw open the front door, her smile wide but her eyes calculating. "Rose, darling, welcome home." I forced a smile, reminding myself this was temporary. I just needed time to figure out my next move. Jake carried my bags upstairs to what would be our room. As he set them down, he pulled me close. "I'm so glad you're here, Rose. We're going to be so happy, I promise." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The first few days were a whirlwind of false cheer and thinly veiled expectations. Linda constantly hovered, asking about my work schedule, my salary, my benefits package. Robert made offhand comments about the family's financial struggles, hinting at how much my contribution would help. On the fourth night, as we sat down to dinner, Linda cleared her throat. "Rose, dear, we've been thinking. Since you're part of the family now, it only makes sense for you to contribute to the household expenses. I nearly choked on my water. Excuse me? Jake squeezed my hand under the table. Mom, we talked about this. Rose just moved in. We can't. Linda waved him off. Nonsense. Rose understands, don't you, dear? Family helps family. I felt trapped, cornered. I suppose I could contribute something. Robert leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Excellent. We were thinking your entire salary would be a good start. The room spun. My entire salary? But what about my own expenses? My savings? Linda laughed, a brittle sound. Oh, Rose, you don't need to worry about that anymore. We'll take care of everything. I looked at Jake, silently pleading for him to say something. Anything. But he just stared at his plate, avoiding my gaze. Ella, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. This isn't right. You can't just take all of Rose's money. Ella, be quiet, Linda snapped. The adults are talking. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. I fled to the backyard, my mind reeling. How had I let things get this far? I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over Leonard's number. But before I could call, Jake appeared beside me. Rose, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they would ask for your entire salary. We can figure something else out. I turned to him, really looking at him for the first time since I'd moved in. Did you know, Jake, about their plans to use me? He hesitated, and in that moment I knew. The betrayal cut deep. I thought I could protect you, he whispered. I thought once we were married, I could make them see reason. I stepped back, my voice shaking. You lied to me. You're just as bad as they are. Jake reached for me, but I pushed past him, running back into the house. I needed to get out to escape this nightmare I'd willingly walked into. But as I reached the front door, Linda blocked my path. Where do you think you're going? I'm leaving, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Linda's eyes narrowed. I don't think so, dear. You see, we've already made some financial arrangements based on your contribution. You can't just walk away now. Robert appeared behind her, his face grim. You're part of this family now, Rose, for better or worse. As they closed in around me, I realized with horror that I was trapped. Not just financially, but physically. The fairy tale had become a nightmare, and I was the prisoner in the tower. In that moment, I knew I had to find a way out, no matter the cost. But how? My heart raced as I paced the confines of my room. No, my prison. It had been 3 days since Linda and Robert's ultimatum, and I felt the walls closing in. Jake had been suspiciously absent, claiming work emergencies. I knew I had to act, and fast. A soft knock on the door startled me. Rose? It's Ella. Can I come in? I hesitated, then opened the door. Ella's eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant for this to happen. In that moment, I saw my way out. Ella, I need your help. Can you trust me? She nodded, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. Over the next hour, we hatched a plan. Ella would create a distraction, allowing me to access the family's financial records. If I could find proof of their schemes, I could expose them. That night, as the family gathered for dinner, Ella knocked over a vase, shattering it across the floor. As Linda and Robert rushed to clean up, I slipped into Robert's study. My hands shook as I rifled through drawers and files. Finally, I found what I was looking for: bank statements, loan documents, all pointing to a web of financial deceit. They weren't just planning to use my money, they were drowning in debt and saw me as their lifeline. I quickly snapped photos with my phone, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it downstairs. Just as I finished, the door creaked open. Jake stood there, his face a mask of betrayal. Rose, what are you doing? I straightened up, clutching my phone. Finding the truth, Jake. The truth you've been hiding from me. His eyes darted to the scattered papers, realization dawning. Rose, please, let me explain. Explain what? I spat. How you and your family plan to use me, to steal my money, my future? Jake reached for me, but I backed away. I love you, Rose. I thought if we got married, I could fix things, make it right. By lying to me? By trapping me in this house? Anger and hurt coursed through me. That's not love, Jake. That's manipulation. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Linda's shrill voice called out, Jake? Is everything all right? I knew it was now or never. Pushing past Jake, I ran down the stairs, nearly colliding with Linda and Robert at the bottom. What's going on? Robert demanded, his eyes narrowing as he saw my phone clutched in my hand. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I know everything, the debts, the schemes, all of it, and I'm leaving. Linda's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... No! I cut her off. I'm done being manipulated. I've canceled our marriage registration, and I have proof of your financial fraud. If you try to stop me, I'll go straight to the police. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, his face ashen. Rose, please. I turned to him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. It's over, Jake. All of it. As I moved towards the door, Ella appeared, my packed suitcase in hand. Linda lunged for her, but Robert held her back, defeat evident in his slumped shoulders. You'll regret this, Linda hissed. You're nothing without us. I paused at the door, looking back at the family that had nearly destroyed me. No, I'm everything without you, and I'm taking my life back. With that, I stepped out into the cool night air, Ella right behind me. As we drove away, the weight of the past few months began to lift. Where will you go? Ella asked softly. I thought of Leonard, of the office, of the life I'd nearly lost. Home, I said. I'm going home. As the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of relief and trepidation. I had escaped, but at what cost? And what challenges lay ahead as I reclaimed my life and my identity? The office felt both familiar and strange as I walked through the doors for the first time in weeks. Whispers followed me down the hallway, but I held my head high. I'd faced worse than office gossip. Leonard was the first to approach me, concern etched on his face. Rose, are you all right? We've all been so worried. I managed a small smile. I'm getting there. It's been a rough few weeks. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. If you need anything, I'm here. As the days passed, I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the clean lines and precise calculations of architecture. Slowly, the whispers died down, replaced by a newfound respect from my colleagues. They'd seen me weather a storm and come out stronger. One evening, as I was packing up to leave, Leonard appeared at my door. Rose, I'm glad you're back, and I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Something in his voice made me look up. The care and admiration in his eyes took my breath away. How had I never noticed it before? Thank you, Leonard, I said softly, for everything. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I focused on rebuilding my career and my sense of self. Ella called occasionally, updating me on her progress in architecture school and assuring me that Jake's family was facing the consequences of their actions. Through it all, Leonard was a steady presence, offering support without pressure. Our friendship deepened, conversations flowing easily over shared lunches and late-night work sessions. It was on one such evening, as we pored over blueprints for a new project, that Leonard suddenly set down his pencil. Rose, there's something I need to tell you. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? He took a deep breath. I've had feelings for you for a long time. I never said anything because, well, timing never seemed right. But after everything that's happened, I realized life's too short to stay silent. I stared at him, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. Fear, excitement, hope. Leonard, he held up a hand. You don't have to say anything now. I know you've been through a lot. I just wanted you to know. In that moment, looking into his kind eyes, I saw a future I'd never dared to imagine before. A partnership based on mutual respect and genuine care. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I expected, I do have something to say. Yes. His eyebrows shot up. Yes? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Yes, I have feelings for you too. And yes, I'd like to see where this goes. The smile that spread across his face was like the sun breaking through clouds. We took things slow, both of us aware of the weight of our shared history and my recent experiences. But with each passing day, I felt more certain that this was right. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Leonard and I stood on the rooftop garden of our latest project. The city lights twinkled below us, a testament to the beauty we'd created together. Leonard turned to me, his eyes shining. Rose, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You're not just my partner in work, but in every aspect of life. I can't imagine a future without you by my side. My breath caught as he dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Rose Thompson, will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the man before me. A man who had stood by me through my darkest times, who valued me for who I was, not what I could give him. Yes, I whispered, then louder. Yes. As Leonard slipped the ring on my finger and pulled me into an embrace, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to a love built on trust, respect, and genuine partnership. I had lost a false fairy tale, but gained something far more precious, a real, enduring love story of my own. I never expected my life to change so dramatically on a sunny Sunday afternoon. The annual family barbecue at my parents' sprawling backyard was in full swing, the air filled with the aroma of grilled burgers and the chatter of relatives catching up. "Megan, sweetheart, can you come here for a moment?" Mom called from the patio, her voice carrying a hint of something I couldn't quite place. I made my way through the crowd, balancing a plate of potato salad in one hand and my daughter's juice box in the other. "What's up, Mom?" Dad stood next to her, his usual jovial expression replaced by an uncharacteristically serious one. "We need to talk to you about something important," he said, gesturing towards the empty chairs. As I sat down, I caught sight of Peter across the yard. My best friend since college, he gave me a curious look, sensing the tension even from a distance. "Honey," Mom began, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her lap, "your father and I have been thinking about the future of the business." I nodded, unsure where this was going. The family hardware store had been a fixture in our small town for 3 generations. Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided it's time to start planning for retirement, and we want you to take over the business." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. "What? Me?" I sputtered, nearly dropping my plate. "But I don't know anything about running a hardware store." "You're smart, Megan," Dad said firmly. "You've got a good head for numbers, and you know how to talk to people. We'll teach you everything else." I shook my head, feeling overwhelmed. "But what about Uncle Jim? Or Cousin Mark? They've both worked at the store for years." Mom reached out and squeezed my hand. "We've thought long and hard about this, sweetie. You're the right choice. We trust you to carry on the family legacy." As if on cue, Peter appeared at my side, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his eyes darting between me and my parents. "Peter," Dad exclaimed, his face brightening. "Perfect timing. We were just telling Megan about our decision to make her the successor to the family business." Peter's eyebrows shot up. "Wow, that's big news," he said, giving me a supportive smile. "Congratulations, Meg." I forced a weak smile in return, my mind racing. How could I possibly run a business and be a single mom? What about my job at the library? And what would the rest of the family say? As if reading my thoughts, Mom leaned in. "We know it's a lot to take in, honey, but we believe in you, and we'll be here to help every step of the way." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Can I have some time to think about it?" Dad nodded. "Of course, but don't take too long. We'd like to start the transition soon." As they stood to rejoin the party, leaving me reeling from the news, I felt Peter's hand on my shoulder. "Hey," he said softly, "want to take a walk?" Grateful for the escape, I nodded and followed him towards the old oak tree at the edge of the property. "So," Peter said as we walked, "future business mogul, huh?" I let out a shaky laugh. "God, Peter, what am I going to do? I can't run a business. I'm barely keeping it together as it is." He stopped and turned to face me, his expression serious. "Megan, listen to me. You're one of the most capable people I know. If anyone can do this, it's you." I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "But what about Emily? How can I be a good mom and run a business?" Peter's voice was gentle but firm. "The same way you've been an amazing mom while working at the library. You'll figure it out. And you won't be alone. I'll be here to help, whatever you need." As I looked into his eyes, I felt a flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with my newfound responsibilities. Before I could respond, a commotion from the patio caught our attention. "Oh no," I groaned, recognizing the raised voices. "Sounds like Uncle Jim just found out." Peter squeezed my hand. "Ready to face the music?" Taking a deep breath, I nodded. "As I'll ever be." Together, we headed back towards the house, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The hardware store loomed before me, its faded sign a stark reminder of the responsibility now resting on my shoulders. I took a deep breath, clutching my coffee cup like a lifeline as I pushed open the door. "Morning, Megan." Uncle Jim called from behind the counter, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The tension from the family barbecue still lingered, thick as the dust on the shelves. "Morning, Uncle Jim," I replied, forcing a cheerfulness I didn't feel. "Ready to show me the ropes?" he grunted, gesturing vaguely towards the back office. "Your father's waiting for you. Good luck." As I made my way through the aisles, doubt gnawed at my insides. What did I know about inventory management or profit margins? I was a librarian, for heaven's sake. Dad looked up as I entered, his face lighting up. "There's my girl. Ready to learn the family business?" I nodded weakly, sinking into the chair across from him. For the next few hours, he walked me through spreadsheets, supplier contracts, and employee schedules. My head spun with information overload. "Don't worry, sweetheart," Dad said, noticing my overwhelmed expression. "You'll get the hang of it in no time." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Peter. "How's it going, future CEO? Lunch later?" I smiled, feeling a flutter of warmth. Peter's unwavering support had been my anchor these past few weeks. As I typed a quick reply, Dad cleared his throat. "So you and Peter seem to be getting pretty close," he said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. I felt my cheeks heat up. "We're just friends, Dad." He raised an eyebrow. "Uh-huh. Well, just remember mixing business and pleasure can be tricky, especially with his family's hotel empire." I frowned, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" Dad leaned back in his chair. "I'm just saying, the Caldwells are big fish in a small pond. Peter's father has some aggressive business practices. I'd hate to see you get caught in the crossfire." Before I could respond, the office door burst open. Uncle Jim stood there, his face flushed. "We've got a problem. The Caldwell Hotel just placed a massive order with our biggest competitor. We're going to lose half our commercial accounts." My stomach dropped. I looked at Dad, expecting him to take charge, but he just nodded at me. "What do you think we should do, Megan?" Panic rose in my throat. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of, being thrust into a situation I wasn't prepared for. But as I looked at the expectant faces of my father and uncle, I knew I had to step up. "Okay," taking a deep breath. "Let's call our supplier and see if we can negotiate better prices. Then we'll reach out to our commercial clients and offer them a loyalty discount." Uncle Jim nodded grudgingly. "Not bad, kid. I'll make the calls." As he left, Dad squeezed my shoulder. "See? You've got good instincts. You'll do just fine." I managed a weak smile, but inside my mind was racing. How could Peter's family do this to us? And what did it mean for my relationship with Peter? Later, as I sat across from Peter at our favorite diner, I couldn't shake the unease. He chatted animatedly about his day, but I barely heard him, lost in my own thoughts. "Meg?" "Earth to Megan," Peter said, waving a hand in front of my face. "You okay?" I blinked, focusing on his concerned expression. "Sorry, just a lot on my mind." "Peter, did you know about your father's deal with our competitor?" His face fell, guilt flashing in his eyes. I heard something about it. But Meg, you have to understand it's just business. My father—" "Just business?" I interrupted, anger flaring. "Peter, this could ruin my family's livelihood." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Megan, please, I'm caught in the middle here. My father's been pushing me to take on more responsibility at the hotel, but I don't want it to come between us." I stared at him, torn between my feelings for Peter and my loyalty to my family. "I don't know if it's that simple anymore," I said softly. As I looked into Peter's pleading eyes, I realized that taking over the family business wasn't just about learning spreadsheets and inventory. It was about navigating a complex web of relationships and loyalties. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that challenge. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my dress for the 100th time. The thought of meeting Peter's parents made my stomach churn. After the fallout from the Caldwell Hotel's business move, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Mommy, you look pretty," Emily chirped from the doorway, her gap-toothed smile melting away some of my anxiety. I scooped her up, breathing in her comforting scent. "Thanks, sweetie. Now you be good for Grandma tonight, okay?" The doorbell rang, and my heart leaped into my throat. Peter stood there, looking dashing in a suit, a bouquet of flowers in his hand. "Meg, you look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm. "Ready to meet the parents?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The drive to the Caldwell mansion was tense, filled with Peter's nervous chatter about his family's quirks. As we pulled up to the sprawling estate, my jaw dropped. "Peter, this is intimidating," he squeezed my hand. "They're just people, Meg. I promise they don't bite." The front door swung open before we could knock, revealing a petite woman with Peter's kind eyes. "You must be Megan," she exclaimed, pulling me into an unexpected hug. "I'm Caroline. Come in, come in." Peter's father, Robert, was waiting in the living room. He stood as we entered, his imposing figure softened by a genuine smile. "Welcome, Megan. We've heard so much about you." As we settled in for drinks, I braced myself for interrogation or thinly veiled contempt. Instead, I found myself drawn into a warm conversation about my daughter, my work at the library, and my newfound role at the family hardware store. "It's not easy taking over a family business," Robert said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I remember when I first started at the hotel, scared out of my wits." I blinked, caught off guard by his candor. "Really? But you've been so successful," he chuckled. "Success doesn't come overnight, my dear. It takes hard work, determination, and a bit of luck." As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing. Caroline regaled us with embarrassing stories from Peter's childhood, while Robert offered thoughtful advice on business management. During a lull in the conversation, I gathered my courage. "Mr. Caldwell, I have to ask about the deal with our competitor." Robert's expression turned serious. "Ah, yes, I owe you an apology, Megan. I didn't realize the impact it would have on your family's business. I've already spoken to my team about finding a way to make it right." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you, that means a lot." As Peter and his father discussed some hotel business, Caroline drew me aside. "Megan, dear, I hope you know how happy we are that Peter's found you. You bring out the best in him." Warmth bloomed in my chest. "He does the same for me," I admitted softly. The evening ended on a high note, with promises of future family dinners and even offers of business advice. As Peter drove me home, I felt a mix of relief and confusion. "See? I told you they'd love you," Peter said, grinning. I nodded, lost in thought. "They're not what I expected. Your dad seems so different from how my father described him." Peter's smile faltered slightly. "Yeah, about that. Meg, there's something I need to tell you." We pulled up to my house, but I made no move to get out. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "My father, he's planning to retire soon, and he wants me to take over the hotel." My heart sank. "Oh, I see." "But that's not all," Peter continued, his voice urgent. "He wants to expand. He's talking about buying up smaller businesses in town, including—" "The hardware store," I finished, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Peter nodded miserably. "I tried to talk him out of it, but he's set on the idea. He thinks it's a smart business move." I stared at him, my mind reeling. The warm, humble couple I'd just met suddenly seemed like a facade. "And what do you think, Peter?" He hesitated, and in that moment, I saw our future hanging in the balance. His answer would determine everything: our relationship, my family's livelihood, the very fabric of our small town. "I think," he said slowly, "that we need to find a way to make this work for everyone. But Meg, I need you to trust me." As I looked into his pleading eyes, I realized that the real challenge was just beginning. Could I trust Peter to stand by me, or would his family's ambitions tear us apart? The days following Peter's revelation were a blur of sleepless nights and anxiety-filled mornings. I threw myself into work at the hardware store, desperately trying to find a way to make it thrive in the face of the Caldwell's expansion plans. One particularly exhausting afternoon, as I pored over inventory sheets, my phone buzzed. It was Caroline Caldwell. "Megan, dear," her warm voice came through the speaker. "Robert and I would love for you to join us for dinner tonight. There's something important we'd like to discuss." My stomach clenched. "Of course, I'd be happy to," I heard myself say, even as my mind raced with possibilities. As I pulled up to the Caldwell mansion that evening, Peter was waiting outside. His face was a mix of excitement and nervousness that did nothing to calm my frayed nerves. "Meg," he said, taking my hands. "Whatever happens in there, just know that I'm on your side, okay?" I nodded, not entirely sure I believed him. Inside, Robert and Caroline greeted us with warm smiles that seemed at odds with the tension I felt. We settled into the opulent dining room, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, as dessert was served, Robert cleared his throat. "Megan, we've been impressed with how you've handled taking over your family's business. It's not an easy task." "Thank you," I said cautiously, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Caroline leaned forward, her eyes sparkling. "Which is why we have a proposition for you. We'd like to offer you a position as co-manager of our new hotel expansion. I blinked. Sure, I had misheard. I'm sorry, what? Robert nodded, looking pleased. Instead of buying out smaller businesses, we've decided to focus on partnering with them. Your hardware store would be a key supplier for our new properties, and you'd have a seat at the table in managing the overall operation. My mind whirled. This was so far from what I'd expected that I didn't know how to respond. Peter squeezed my hand under the table. It's a chance for us to work together, Meg, to build something amazing. I looked at the eager faces around me, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. This is a lot to take in. What about my parents' store? I can't just abandon it. Of course not, Caroline said quickly. The store would remain yours, but with our backing and resources, you could expand it beyond your wildest dreams. As they laid out more details of their plan, I found myself getting caught up in the excitement. The possibilities seemed endless. New jobs for the town, a chance to modernize the store, a future with Peter that didn't involve choosing between him and my family. But as the evening wore on, a nagging doubt began to creep in. Was this too good to be true? What were the Caldwells really after? As Peter walked me to my car later that night, I couldn't shake my unease. It all sounds wonderful, I said slowly, but I can't help feeling like there's something I'm missing. Peter's face fell slightly. Meg, I promise you, there's no hidden agenda here. My parents see your potential just like I do. They want to help, not take over. I wanted to believe him, but years of struggling as a single mom had taught me to be cautious. I need some time to think about it, I said finally. And to talk to my parents. This affects them too. Peter nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. As he leaned in to kiss me goodnight, I felt a flutter of excitement mixed with fear. This decision could change everything. My future, my family's legacy, my relationship with Peter. Driving home, my mind raced with possibilities and pitfalls. The Caldwells' offer was tempting, but was it worth the risk? Could I trust them and Peter with everything I held dear? As I pulled into my driveway, I saw my parents' car parked outside. They were waiting up, eager to hear about the dinner. In that moment, I realized the weight of the decision before me. It wasn't just about business or love. It was about loyalty, family, and the kind of person I wanted to be. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car ready to face whatever came next. One thing was certain. After tonight, nothing would ever be the same. The weeks following the Caldwells' proposal flew by in a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and late-night planning sessions. I found myself swept up in the excitement of it all, my initial doubts fading as I saw the potential for growth and success. Peter and I grew closer than ever, our shared vision for the future, bringing us together in ways I never imagined. One night, as we pored over blueprints for the new hotel expansion, he surprised me with a small velvet box. Meg, he said, his eyes shining, I can't imagine doing any of this without you. Will you marry me? My heart soared as I said yes, the diamond sparkling on my finger, a symbol of all the promises we'd made. But even as we dove into wedding plans, the reality of our new business venture began to set in. The hardware store was busier than ever, supplying materials for the hotel renovations, and I found myself stretched thin trying to manage it all. One particularly hectic morning, as I juggled phone calls and inventory orders, my father walked in, his face grave. Megan, we need to talk, he said, gesturing to the back office. My stomach dropped. What's wrong, Dad? He sighed heavily as we sat down. I've been looking over the numbers for the store, and something doesn't add up. We're moving more inventory than ever, but our profits are down, way down. I frowned, pulling up the spreadsheets on my computer. As we pored over the figures, a sickening realization dawned on me. The discounts we'd been offering the Caldwell project were far too steep. We were barely breaking even on most orders. How could I have missed this? I whispered, horror washing over me. Dad squeezed my shoulder. You've had a lot on your plate, sweetheart, but we need to fix this and fast, or we'll be out of business within months. Just then my phone buzzed with a text from Peter. Emergency at the hotel site. Need you here ASAP. I looked at my father, torn between my responsibilities to the store and my commitment to the new venture. Go, he said softly. But Megan, be careful. Make sure you're not losing yourself in all of this. At the construction site, I found Peter in heated discussion with his father and a group of contractors. The tension in the air was palpable. "Ah, Megan, there you are," Robert Caldwell boomed. "We need your expertise. These gentlemen seem to think we need to cut corners on some of the materials to stay on budget. I told them we have a deal with your store for top-quality supplies at the best prices." I felt the blood drain from my face. How could I tell them that those best prices were driving my family's business into the ground? Peter caught my eye, his brow furrowed in concern. "Meg, what do you think?" In that moment, standing amidst the half-built walls of our future, I felt the weight of my decisions crushing down on me. The store that had been my family's legacy for generations was on the brink of failure because of my poor management. The grand plans I'd made with Peter and his family suddenly seemed like a house of cards, ready to topple at the slightest breeze. "I need some time to look over the numbers," I managed to say, my voice shaking slightly. "Can we reconvene tomorrow?" Robert frowned, clearly displeased, but Peter quickly stepped in. "Of course, we all want to make the best decision here. Let's take a day to review everything." As the group dispersed, Peter pulled me aside. "What's going on, Meg? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "Peter, we need to talk about the store, about this project, about us." His face fell, sensing the gravity of my words. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's go somewhere private." As we walked away from the bustling construction site, I knew I was at a crossroads. The choices I made in the next few hours would determine not just the fate of my family's business, but the course of my entire future. Could I find a way to save the store without jeopardizing my relationship with Peter and his family? Or was I about to lose everything I'd worked so hard to build? With each step, the weight of my engagement ring seemed to grow heavier, a reminder of all that was at stake. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake at 3 a.m. Peter's name flashed on the screen, sending a chill down my spine. "Meg, it's Dad," Peter's voice cracked. "He's had a heart attack. We're at the hospital." The next few hours passed in a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. By dawn, Robert Caldwell was stable but unconscious. The doctors spoke of a long recovery, and as I watched Caroline collapse into tears, I knew everything was about to change. Peter pulled me aside, his face haggard. "Meg, I need to step in at the hotel. Dad's been running everything, and with the new expansion..." I nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility suddenly thrust upon him. "Of course. What can I do to help?" Little did I know those words would come back to haunt me. Over the next few weeks, I watched Peter transform. The caring, supportive man I'd fallen in love with vanished, replaced by a stressed, short-tempered stranger. He threw himself into work, often staying at the hotel until the early hours of the morning. One evening, exhausted from juggling the hardware store and helping with the hotel, I arrived at Peter's office with dinner, hoping for a quiet moment together. Instead, I found him shouting at a group of employees, "I don't care if it's not in the budget. Make it happen, or find another job." The workers scurried out, leaving Peter and me alone. He turned, his eyes blazing. "What are you doing here?" I held up the takeout bag, suddenly feeling foolish. "I thought we could have dinner together. Maybe talk about the wedding plans." Peter scoffed. "Wedding plans? Meg, we're in the middle of a crisis here. The expansion is behind schedule, over budget, and you're worried about flower arrangements?" His words stung like a slap. "Peter, I'm trying to help, but I'm also trying to save my family's business. The discounts we're giving you..." "Oh, here we go again," he interrupted, rolling his eyes. "Meg, it's business. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the greater good." "The greater good?" I echoed, incredulous. "Peter, we're talking about my family's livelihood." He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. "And we're talking about my family's legacy. Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? My father built this empire, and now it's all on me." I took a step back, suddenly seeing Peter in a new light. "What happened to 'we're in this together'?" I asked quietly. His face softened for a moment, a flicker of the old Peter shining through. "Meg, I'm sorry, I'm drowning here." I reached out to him, but he turned away, his attention caught by a ringing phone. "I have to take this. We'll talk later, okay?" But later never seemed to come. Days turned into weeks, and Peter grew more distant, more demanding. The hotel staff walked on eggshells around him, and I found myself constantly running interference, trying to smooth over his harsh words and unreasonable demands. One afternoon, as I was reviewing invoices in the hotel office, I overheard Peter in a heated conversation with his mother. "We can't keep operating like this, Peter." Caroline's voice was strained. "Your father would never—" "Well, Dad's not here, is he?" Peter snapped. "And if we don't turn this around, there won't be a hotel for him to come back to." "And what about Megan?" Caroline asked softly. "Have you thought about what this is doing to her, to your relationship?" There was a long pause before Peter replied, his voice cold. "Megan will understand. This is business, Mom. Nothing personal." I felt my world crumble around me. The man I loved, the future I dreamed of, it was all slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. As I stood there, frozen in shock, my phone buzzed with a message from my father. "Emergency at the store. Need you here now." In that moment, torn between the crumbling remains of my personal life and the family business I'd sworn to protect, I realized I was facing the biggest crisis of my life. Everything I cared about was at stake, and I had no idea how to save it all. With trembling hands, I gathered my things and slipped out of the hotel, Peter's harsh words still ringing in my ears. As I drove towards an uncertain future, I wondered if there was anything left of my dreams to salvage, or if it was time to cut my losses and start anew. The hardware store was in chaos when I arrived. Dad stood amidst a sea of paperwork, his face ashen. "Megan, we're in trouble. Big trouble." As we pored over the books, the full extent of our crisis became clear. The steep discounts we'd given the Caldwell Hotel had pushed us to the brink of bankruptcy. We had less than a month before we'd have to close our doors for good. "I'm so sorry, Dad," I whispered, guilt crushing me. "This is all my fault." He squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out, sweetheart. We always do." But as I drove back to the hotel, determination replaced my despair. I'd fix this mess, with or without Peter's help. The hotel lobby was a flurry of activity when I arrived. Sarah, the head of housekeeping, rushed up to me, her eyes wild. "Thank goodness you're here, Megan. Half the staff just quit, and we have a full house tonight." I took a deep breath, pushing my own problems aside. "Okay, let's get to work." For the next 12 hours, I was everywhere at once, checking in guests, making beds, soothing frayed nerves. By midnight, we'd managed to avert disaster, but I was exhausted. As I slumped against the front desk, Caroline appeared, concern etched on her face. "Megan, dear, you look terrible. Where's Peter?" I laughed bitterly. "Your guess is as good as mine. He hasn't answered his phone all day." Caroline's expression hardened. "This isn't like him. Something's wrong." Just then, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Hello? Is this Megan?" a woman's voice asked. "I'm calling from the Oasis Hotel. There's a gentleman here who's had too much to drink. He says he's your fiancé." My heart sank. "I'll be right there." I found Peter slumped at the bar of our biggest competitor, barely conscious. As I half-carried him to my car, he mumbled, "I'm sorry, Meg, I've ruined everything." Back at our hotel, I helped him to bed, my mind racing. How had we come to this? The next morning, I was back at the front desk when Peter stumbled down, looking worse for wear. "Meg, we need to talk." But before he could continue, a group of angry investors burst in, led by Robert Caldwell himself, looking frail but furious. "Where's my son?" Robert demanded. "What's he done to my hotel?" As accusations flew and tempers flared, I found myself stepping between Peter and the angry mob. "Everyone, please, let's discuss this calmly." For the next hour, I mediated a tense meeting, piecing together the extent of Peter's mismanagement. He'd made risky investments, alienated key partners, and nearly run the hotel into the ground. When the dust settled, Robert turned to me, his eyes shrewd. "Megan, you've shown remarkable leadership today. How would you like to take over as interim manager?" I blinked, stunned. "But what about Peter?" Robert's face hardened. "My son needs time to get his act together. The hotel needs someone competent at the helm." As the weight of the offer sank in, I realized this was my chance to save not just the hotel, but my family store as well. But could I do it? And at what cost to my relationship with Peter? I looked at Peter, hoping to see some sign of the man I'd fallen in love with, but his eyes were cold, resentful. "Go ahead, Meg. Take it. You've always wanted to be in charge anyway." His words stung, but they also ignited a fire within me. "You know what? I will." Turning to Robert, I squared my shoulders. I accept, on one condition. We renegotiate our contract with my family's hardware store. Fair prices that benefit both businesses. Robert nodded, impressed. Done. As the room cleared out, I found myself alone with Peter. The air between us crackled with unspoken words and broken promises. "So this is it?" Peter said, his voice bitter. "You're taking everything from me?" I felt my heart breaking, but I stood my ground. "No, Peter, you did this to yourself." As he stormed out, I sank into a chair, the enormity of what lay ahead crashing down on me. I'd saved the hotel and my family's store, but at what cost? Could I really do this alone? Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "Proud of you, kiddo. You've got this." Taking a deep breath, I stood up. It was time to get to work. The real test was just beginning. 6 months had passed since I took over as interim manager of the Caldwell Hotel. Every day had been a battle, but slowly, surely, we were turning things around. The staff rallied behind me, the guests were happy, and even Robert Caldwell had started to smile again. I hadn't heard from Peter in weeks. Part of me was relieved, while another part ached for closure. But I had no time for regrets. I had a hotel to run and a family business to save. It was a busy Friday afternoon when I saw him walk through the lobby doors. My heart stuttered. Peter looked good. Too good. Tanned, well-dressed, with a sparkle in his eye I hadn't seen in months, and on his arm was a young woman, her laughter tinkling across the marble floor. "Megan," Peter called out, his voice jovial. "Just the person I wanted to see." I steeled myself, plastering on a professional smile. "Peter, welcome back. How can I help you?" He grinned, pulling the woman closer. "Megan, I'd like you to meet Sophia, my fiancée." The world tilted on its axis. "Fiancée?" I repeated, my voice sounding far away. Peter nodded, oblivious to my shock. "We met on my trip to the Bahamas. It was love at first sight. Anyway, we're here to plan our wedding. I want to host it here, at the hotel, for old time's sake." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "I see. And what does your father think about this?" Peter waved dismissively. "Oh, Dad will come around. Once he sees how happy I am, how successful I've become with my new business ventures, he'll understand why I needed to step away from the hotel." I nodded, had my mind racing. "Of course. Well, congratulations. If you'll excuse me, I need to check on something in the office. Sarah here will help you with your reservation." As I turned to leave, Peter caught my arm. "Oh, and Meg? I'll need those divorce papers signed ASAP, for the wedding, you know?" I pulled away, my voice ice cold. "I'll have my lawyer contact you." In my office, I allowed myself a moment to break down. Tears of anger, hurt, and frustration flowed freely. But as I looked at the framed photo on my desk, my daughter, my parents, and me at the grand reopening of our hardware store, I felt a steely resolve settle over me. Taking a deep breath, I made a call. "Robert, it's Megan. We need to talk." An hour later, I walked back into the lobby, my head held high. Peter and Sophia were at the bar, champagne flutes in hand. "Peter," I called out, my voice steady. "A word, please?" He sauntered over, cocky grin in place. "What's up, Meg? Everything set for the wedding?" I smiled, sweet as poison. "Not quite. You see, there's been a change in management you should know about." Peter's grin faltered. "What do you mean?" "Well, your father and the board were so impressed with my work these past months, they've offered me the position of permanent general manager, with a significant ownership stake." The color drained from Peter's face. But that's my position, my birthright." I shook my head. "Not anymore." "Oh, and about that wedding? I'm afraid we're fully booked for the next year. You understand, don't you? It's just business after all, nothing personal." As Peter sputtered and raged, I saw Sophia slip away, her eyes wide with realization. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You can't do this," Peter hissed. "I'll fight you. You'll what?" I interrupted. "Sue your own family's hotel? Go ahead. I'm sure the press will love that story." As security escorted a fuming Peter out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I'd faced my greatest challenge and come out stronger. The hotel was thriving, my family's store was saved, and I had finally found my own path. Later that evening, as I tucked my daughter into bed, she asked, "Mommy, are you happy?" I smiled, realizing the truth in my answer. "Yes, sweetheart, I really am." As I closed her bedroom door, my phone buzzed with a message from Caroline. "Dinner tomorrow? We have some exciting expansion plans to discuss." I grinned, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The storm had passed, and I had not only weathered it but emerged victorious. The future was bright, and this time, I was in control. Standing at the window, looking out at the twinkling lights of the city, I raised a silent toast to myself. To new beginnings, hard-won victories, and the sweet taste of well-deserved success. The best revenge, after all, is living well, and I intended to do just that. The antique vase shattered at my feet, its delicate porcelain fragments scattering across the hardwood floor. I stood frozen, my hand still outstretched from where I'd knocked it off the shelf. The silence that followed was deafening. "Mom, what have you done?" Sophie's shrill voice pierced the air, her eyes wide with horror. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. How could I tell them it was an accident when they were looking at me like I was a criminal? Ethan, my husband of 20 years, rushed into the room, his face contorted with anger as he surveyed the scene. "Amanda, that was my mother's prized possession. How could you?" I didn't mean to," I stammered, finally finding my voice. "I was just dusting and—" "Save it," Ethan snapped, cutting me off. "You've always been jealous of my mother's things. Admit it, you did this on purpose." I felt like I'd been slapped. "What? No, of course not. It was an accident, I swear." Sophie scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Right, Mom. Just like it was an accident when you lost Grandma's pearl necklace last month?" My heart sank. That had been a genuine mistake, but now it was being used against me. I looked from my daughter to my husband, searching for any sign of understanding in their eyes. There was none. "I think you should leave," Ethan said, his voice cold and firm. "Leave? But this is my home," I protested, feeling panic rise in my chest. "Not anymore," he replied. "I want you out by tonight. We can't trust you around valuable things anymore." I turned to Sophie, hoping for support, but she just crossed her arms and looked away. My own daughter siding with her father against me. The betrayal stung worse than any physical pain. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where am I supposed to go?" Ethan shrugged, already turning away. "That's not my problem. Just get out of my sight." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Ethan went to answer it, leaving me alone with Sophie. "Sophie, honey, please," I pleaded. "You know I would never do something like this on purpose." She met my gaze, her eyes hard. "Do I? You've always resented Dad's success and Grandma's wealth. Maybe you finally snapped." Before I could respond, Ethan returned with a police officer in tow. My blood ran cold. "Officer, this is my wife," Ethan said, his voice dripping with false concern. "She's been acting erratically lately, destroying family heirlooms. We're worried about her mental state." The officer looked at me sympathetically. "Ma'am, is there someone we can call for you? Somewhere you can stay tonight?" I felt like I was in a nightmare. How had things spiraled so quickly? Just this morning, we'd been a normal family having breakfast together. Now, I was being treated like a criminal in my own home. I can call my sister," I managed to say, my voice shaking. As I fumbled for my phone, I caught sight of Ethan and Sophie exchanging a look. There was something in their eyes, something that made me wonder if this was more than just a misunderstanding. The officer escorted me to my room to pack a bag. As I threw clothes haphazardly into a suitcase, my mind raced. What was really going on here? Why were Ethan and Sophie so quick to turn on me? I paused, my hand on a framed photo of the three of us from happier times. Something wasn't right, and I was determined to find out what it was. They might think they've won, kicking me out like this, but they had no idea what I was capable of. As I walked out of the house I'd called home for 2 decades, I made a silent vow. I would uncover the truth, clear my name, and make them regret ever doubting me. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. I spent a restless night on Abby's couch, my mind racing with questions and doubts. The morning light had barely crept through the curtains when my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. "Mom, you need to come to Grandma's house, now." My heart leaped into my throat. "Is everything okay?" "Just come," she snapped before hanging up. I arrived at my mother-in-law's sprawling Victorian home within the hour, my stomach in knots. Ethan's car was already in the driveway. As I approached the front door, I heard raised voices inside. "I'm telling you, Mother, it was Amanda." Ethan's voice carried through the open window. "She's been eyeing your valuables for years." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. What was he doing? "But dear, Amanda's always been so kind," his mother Margaret replied. Her voice was frail, confused. Are you sure? Of course I'm sure, Ethan insisted. Why do you think she's not here now? She's probably pawning your things as we speak. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Anger surged through me as I burst through the door. How dare you? Ethan spun around, his face a mask of false concern. Amanda, what are you doing here? Sophie called me, I said, glaring at him. And I'm glad she did. What lies are you feeding your mother? Margaret looked between us, her eyes clouded with confusion. Ethan, you said Amanda stole from me? Because she did, Mother, Ethan said smoothly. Remember the missing pearl necklace and now the vase? That's not true, I protested. Margaret, you know me. I would never. Oh, Amanda, Margaret interrupted, her voice trembling. How could you, after all these years? My heart shattered. I turned to Sophie, who stood silently in the corner. Sophie, please, tell your grandmother the truth. But Sophie just looked away, avoiding my gaze. In that moment, I realized how deep Ethan's manipulation ran. He had turned not just my daughter against me, but his own mother, too. I think you should leave, Ethan said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. You're upsetting Mother. I stood my ground. I'm not going anywhere until we sort this out. Margaret, please try to remember. I've always respected your things. It's Ethan who... Enough, Ethan shouted, his calm facade cracking. Mother doesn't need this stress. Sophie, take Grandma upstairs. As Sophie led a bewildered Margaret away, I turned on Ethan. What game are you playing? His eyes narrowed. Game? I'm protecting my family from a thief. We both know that's not true, I hissed. Why are you doing this? What are you hiding? For a split second I saw fear flicker in Ethan's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by cold anger. You're delusional, Amanda. Maybe you need professional help. The only help I need is a good lawyer, I retorted. You won't get away with this. Ethan laughed, a cruel sound that sent chills down my spine. Get away with what? Telling the truth? Face it, Amanda. No one will believe you over me. I'm the successful businessman. You're just a housewife with a history of accidents around valuable antiques. His words hit me like a physical blow. I realized then how carefully he had orchestrated this, how long he must have been planning it. But why? As I turned to leave, I caught sight of a letter on Margaret's desk. The logo at the top made my blood run cold. It was from the bank that handled Ethan's business accounts. Suddenly, pieces started falling into place. The missing antiques, Ethan's increasingly lavish spending, his desperation to discredit me. Was he in financial trouble? I walked out of the house, my mind whirling. Ethan thought he had won, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. I might be down, but I was far from out. It was time to start digging, to uncover what Ethan was really hiding. As I drove away, I made a silent vow. I would expose Ethan's lies, clear my name, and reclaim my life. The game was on, and I intended to win. I sat at Abby's kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and mulling over the events of the past few days. My sister bustled around, preparing breakfast and shooting concerned glances my way. Amanda, you need to eat something, she said, sliding a plate of toast in front of me. I shook my head. I can't. I keep thinking about Sophie. How could she turn on me like this? Abby sighed, taking the seat across from me. Honey, you've been blind to this for years. Ethan's been poisoning Sophie against you since she was little. What are you talking about? I asked, my defenses rising. Think about it, Abby pressed. Who always gave in to her every whim? Who never made her face consequences? Ethan's turned that girl into a spoiled princess, and you've let it happen. Her words stung, but deep down I knew she was right. I thought back to all the times Ethan had undermined my parenting, always playing the fun dad while I was left to be the disciplinarian. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Dad's taking me to Paris for the weekend. Thought you should know. I showed the message to Abby, my hands shaking. See? He's buying her loyalty with trips and gifts. Abby's eyes narrowed. Amanda, don't you think it's odd that Ethan's splurging on a Paris trip right after accusing you of theft? Where's this money coming from? Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Abby went to answer it, and I heard hushed voices in the hallway. A moment later, she returned with a stern-faced woman in a suit. Mrs. Thompson? The woman asked. I'm Linda Carson from Child Protective Services. We need to talk about your daughter, Sophie. My heart plummeted. What? Why? Linda sat down, her expression grave. We've received reports of potential emotional abuse and neglect. Given the recent accusations against you, we need to assess Sophie's living situation. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This is ridiculous. I've never abused Sophie. Ethan's the one who. Mrs. Thompson, Linda interrupted, please understand that we're just doing our job. We'll be conducting interviews with Sophie, your husband, and other family members. As Linda continued explaining the process, my mind raced. This had Ethan written all over it. He was using the system against me, painting me as an unfit mother. Can I at least talk to Sophie? I asked, my voice cracking. Linda shook her head. I'm afraid that's not possible right now. We need to conduct our initial interviews without any potential influence. After Linda left, I collapsed into Abby's arms, sobbing. He's taking everything from me, Abby. My home, my daughter, my reputation. Abby held me tight, her voice fierce. Listen to me, Amanda. Ethan might think he's won, but he's underestimated you. It's time to fight back. I pulled away, wiping my eyes. How? He holds all the cards. Not all of them, Abby said, a glint in her eye. Remember that letter you saw at Margaret's house? From the bank? I think it's time we did some digging into Ethan's finances. A spark of hope ignited in my chest. You're right. If Ethan's hiding something, that's where we'll find it. As we started planning our next move, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Sophie. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what to believe anymore. I stared at the message, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Maybe all wasn't lost with Sophie after all. But I knew one thing for certain. I had to act fast. Ethan was playing a dangerous game, and it was time I learned the rules. I looked up at Abby, a new determination in my eyes. Let's do this. It's time to uncover what Ethan's really hiding and save our family before it's too late. The familiar creak of the porch steps brought a rush of memories as I approached my childhood home. It had been years since I'd last visited, but desperate times called for desperate measures. My mother rose, opened the door before I could knock, her weathered face a mix of concern and love. Amanda, sweetheart, she said, pulling me into a tight embrace. Abby called. I've been worried sick. I melted into her arms, feeling like a little girl again. Oh, Mom, everything's falling apart. She ushered me inside, the scent of freshly baked cookies enveloping me like a warm blanket. As we sat at the kitchen table, I poured out the whole sordid story. Ethan's accusations, Sophie's betrayal, the CPS investigation. Mom listened intently, her brow furrowing with each new revelation. That no-good son-in-law of mine, she muttered when I finished. I always knew he was trouble. I sighed, cradling a mug of tea in my hands. I should have seen it coming. How could I have been so blind? Mom reached across the table, clasping my hand. Now you listen here, Amanda. You are not to blame for Ethan's deceit, but it's high time you stood up for yourself. But how? I asked, feeling utterly defeated. He's taken everything from me, my home, my daughter, my reputation. A steely glint appeared in Mom's eyes. He hasn't taken your spirit, has he? You're a fighter, Amanda. Always have been. Remember when you were 10 and those bullies stole your bike? I couldn't help but smile at the memory. I tracked them down and demanded it back. Exactly, Mom nodded. You didn't give up then, and you're not giving up now. Ethan might think he's won, but he doesn't know who he's dealing with. As we talked, a plan began to form. Mom suggested I reach out to her old friend, a retired detective named Frank, who might be able to help investigate Ethan's finances. She also reminded me of the importance of documenting everything. Every interaction, every accusation, every suspicious move Ethan made. Knowledge is power, sweetheart, she said. The more you know, the stronger your position. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophie. Mom, I'm scared. Dad's acting weird. Can we talk? My heart raced. This could be my chance to reconnect with my daughter to help her see the truth. But what if it was a trap? What should I do, Mom? I asked, showing her the message. She squeezed my hand. Trust your instincts, Amanda. You know your daughter. If she's reaching out, there must be a reason. Taking a deep breath, I typed out a reply. Of course, sweetie. Name the time and place. As I hit send, a wave of determination washed over me. Mom was right. I was a fighter. And it was time to show Ethan exactly what I was made of. I need to go back, I said, standing up. I can't hide out here while Ethan destroys everything we've built. Mom nodded, a proud smile on her face. That's my girl. But remember, you're not alone in this fight. Your family has your back. As I packed my bags, Mom's words of wisdom echoed in my mind. Adversity doesn't build character, Amanda. It reveals it, and you, my dear, have character in spades. Hugging her goodbye, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Ethan might have landed the first punch, but I was far from knocked out. It was time to gather evidence, reconnect with Sophie, and expose Ethan's lies. Driving away from my childhood home, I made a solemn vow. I would reclaim my life, clear my name, and show Sophie the truth about her father. The road ahead would be tough, but I was tougher. Ethan had no idea what was coming his way. The familiar jingle of the bell above the door of Ethan's Antiques sent a chill down my spine. I'd entered this shop countless times before, but never like this, a woman on a mission, determined to uncover the truth. Amanda? Marge, Ethan's longtime assistant, looked up from the counter, surprise etched on her face. I thought you were away. I forced a smile. Just stopping by to pick up some personal items, Marge. Is Ethan around? She shook her head. He's at an auction in Boston. Won't be back till tomorrow. Perfect. I made my way to the back office, my heart pounding. I had maybe an hour before Marge's curiosity got the better of her. Sitting at Ethan's desk, I booted up his computer. Thank God he'd never changed his password. Our wedding anniversary of all things. As I dug through the financial records, a pattern emerged. Large sums of money moving in and out of accounts I'd never seen before. Sales records for items I knew we'd never had in stock. And then I saw it. A transaction for an antique vase, matching the description of his mother's prized possession, sold to a private collector for an astronomical sum. My hands shook as I scribbled down account numbers and dates. This was it. Proof of Ethan's deception. But as I delved deeper, I realized it was just the tip of the iceberg. The business was hemorrhaging money, and Ethan was desperately trying to cover it up. Suddenly, the office door swung open. I looked up, expecting to see Marge, but instead found myself face to face with Sophie. Mom? Her eyes widened in shock. What are you doing here? I scrambled to close the files on the computer. Sophie, I can explain. Are you stealing from Dad? She accused, her voice rising. Is that why you're sneaking around? No, sweetie. It's not what you think, I pleaded, reaching for her. I'm trying to uncover the truth. Your father, he's been... Stop it, Sophie shouted, backing away. I don't want to hear your lies. I'm calling Dad. As she pulled out her phone, panic surged through me. If Ethan found out I'd been here, all my efforts would be for nothing. In a split-second decision, I grabbed Sophie's arm. Listen to me, I said urgently. Your father is not who you think he is. He's been lying to all of us, including your grandmother. I can prove it, but I need you to trust me. Sophie hesitated, her finger hovering over Ethan's number. Why should I believe you? Because I'm your mother, I said softly. And despite everything that's happened, I love you more than anything in this world. I would never lie to you, Sophie. Not about this. For a moment, we stood in tense silence. Then, slowly, Sophie lowered her phone. You have 5 minutes to explain. Relief washed over me. I quickly showed her the financial records, explaining the discrepancies and the suspicious transactions. As understanding dawned on her face, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. But why would Dad do this? She asked, her voice small. I don't know, sweetheart, I admitted. But I intend to find out. Will you help me? Sophie bit her lip, conflict clear on her face. Then, with a determined nod, she said, What do you need me to do? In that moment, I felt a surge of hope. My daughter was back on my side. But I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. Ethan would return soon, and when he did, all hell would break loose. As we hurriedly copied files and gathered evidence, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. The stakes had never been higher. Not just for me, but for Sophie and the entire family. One thing was certain. There was no turning back now. The truth would come out, no matter the cost. My heart raced as I approached the sprawling mansion. This was it. The home of Ethan's wealthiest client, Richard Holloway. Sophie had overheard Ethan mentioning a special delivery here, and my gut told me this was where we'd find the missing antique. Are you sure about this, Mom? Sophie whispered beside me, her face pale with anxiety. I squeezed her hand. We have to know the truth, sweetheart, no matter what. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. A maid answered, eyeing us suspiciously. We're here to see Mr. Holloway, I said, mustering all the confidence I could. It's about an antique he recently acquired. Moments later, we were ushered into an opulent study. Richard Holloway, A distinguished man in his 60s greeted us warmly. "Ah, you must be from Ethan's Antiques," he said, smiling. I was expecting someone to check on the vase. Magnificent piece, isn't it? My breath caught in my throat as I spotted it. Margaret's prized antique vase, sitting proudly on a pedestal by the window. "Actually, Mr. Holloway," I began, my voice shaking slightly, "I'm Amanda Thompson, Ethan's wife. And this vase, it belongs to my mother-in-law." Richard's smile faltered. "I'm afraid there must be some mistake. I purchased this vase legitimately from your husband's shop." "No mistake," Sophie interjected, her voice stronger than I expected. "That's my grandmother's vase. Dad had no right to sell it." As Richard's confusion grew, I quickly explained the situation, Ethan's accusations, the family turmoil, and our suspicions about the business's finances. "Good Lord," Richard muttered, sinking into his chair. "I had no idea. I've been doing business with Ethan for years. This is troubling." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Abby. "Ethan's on his way to Holloway's. He knows you're there." Panic surged through me. "Mr. Holloway, I hate to ask this, but could you please not mention our visit to my husband? We need time to gather more evidence." Richard nodded gravely. "Of course, this is a serious matter. I'll cooperate fully with any investigation." As we hurried out, I saw Ethan's car turning into the driveway. "Quick, Sophie," I hissed, pulling her behind a hedge. We watched as Ethan strode up to the house, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Through the open study window, we could hear snippets of his conversation with Richard. "Misunderstanding, my wife is unstable, custody battle." My blood boiled at Ethan's lies, but Sophie's grip on my arm tightened. "Not yet, Mom," she whispered. "We need more proof." She was right, of course, but hearing Ethan spin his web of deceit made me realize just how far he was willing to go to protect himself. As we snuck away, I knew we were racing against time. Ethan would soon realize we'd been there, and he'd stop at nothing to discredit us. "What now?" Sophie asked as we drove away, her voice trembling. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. "We need to move fast. We'll go to the police, show them the financial records, tell them about the vase." Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Margaret, Ethan's mother. "Amanda?" Her frail voice quavered. "Ethan says you've stolen from me. He wants to put me in a home. Please, what's going on?" My heart sank. Ethan was making his move, isolating Margaret to keep her quiet. "Don't worry," I assured her, though fear gnawed at my insides. "I'm coming to get you. Everything will be all right." As I ended the call, I realized the true extent of Ethan's manipulation. He wasn't just trying to frame me. He was systematically destroying every relationship I had, every support system I could turn to. I looked at Sophie, saw the fear and determination in her eyes, and made a decision. "Change of plans," I said, making a sharp U-turn. "We're getting your grandmother. It's time to end this, once and for all." As we raced towards Margaret's house, I knew we were hurtling towards a confrontation that would change everything. But I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back, to reclaim my life and protect my family. Whatever Ethan had planned, he was about to learn that he'd underestimated me for the last time. We burst through the door of Margaret's house, finding her in the living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Her eyes, wide with confusion and fear, met mine. "Amanda? Sophie? What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're getting you out of here, Margaret," I said, rushing to her side. "Ethan's been lying to all of us." Sophie started gathering Margaret's essentials while I quickly explained the situation. Margaret's face crumpled as the truth sank in. "My own son, how could he?" she whispered. Just then, we heard the screech of tires outside. Ethan had arrived. "Quick, out the back," I urged, helping Margaret to her feet. We were halfway across the backyard when Ethan's voice boomed behind us. "Stop right there!" We turned to face him, his face contorted with rage. "What do you think you're doing, Amanda? Kidnapping my mother now?" "Enough, Ethan," I shouted, my fear transforming into anger. "We know everything. The embezzlement, selling your mother's antiques, framing me. It's over." Ethan's eyes darted between us, calculating his next move. "You have no proof," he sneered. "Who do you think they'll believe? The respected businessman or the unstable wife?" "They'll believe the truth," Sophie interjected, stepping forward. "I've seen the evidence, Dad. How could you do this to us, to Grandma?" For a moment, Ethan's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of shame, but it quickly hardened into defiance. You don't understand. The business was failing. I had to do something. By stealing from your own mother? Margaret's voice was quiet but firm. By destroying your family? Ethan's composure cracked. I never meant for it to go this far. The first sale was just to cover a small debt, but then it spiraled. I couldn't stop. As Ethan's confession poured out, I felt a mix of vindication and sorrow. This man I'd loved, the father of my child, had betrayed us all so completely. It's not too late to make this right, Ethan, I said, softening my tone. Turn yourself in. We can work through this as a family. For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes. Then, without warning, he lunged forward, grabbing Margaret's arm. No, I won't let you ruin everything I've built. Let her go, Ethan! I screamed, fear gripping my heart as Margaret stumbled. Sophie rushed to her grandmother's aid, while I faced off against my husband. In his eyes, I saw desperation, the cornered look of a man with nothing left to lose. Think about what you're doing, I pleaded, inching closer. This isn't you, Ethan. Remember the man I fell in love with, the father Sophie adores. He's still in there somewhere. Ethan's grip on Margaret loosened slightly. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted, his voice breaking. Just then, police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone, probably a neighbor, had called them. It's over, Dad, Sophie said gently, supporting Margaret. Please don't make this worse. As the police cars pulled up, Ethan's shoulders sagged in defeat. He released Margaret and slumped to the ground, burying his face in his hands. While the officers took Ethan into custody, I held Margaret and Sophie close. We'd won, but the victory felt hollow. Our family was irrevocably changed. As we watched Ethan being driven away, Sophie turned to me, tears in her eyes. What happens now, Mom? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on us. I don't know, sweetheart, but we'll face it together, one day at a time. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with legal battles, emotional healing, and rebuilding trust. But as I stood there with my daughter and mother-in-law, I felt a glimmer of hope. We'd survived the worst of the storm. Now it was time to pick up the pieces and start anew. 6 months after Ethan's arrest, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer. Today was the final day of his trial, and I was determined to face it with the strength I'd discovered within myself. Mom, Sophie's voice called from downstairs. Are you ready? I took a deep breath. Coming, sweetie. As we drove to the courthouse, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The initial shock of Ethan's betrayal had given way to a steely resolve. Sophie, once Daddy's little girl, had matured beyond her years, standing by my side through it all. The courtroom was packed as we entered. I caught sight of Margaret, frail but determined, sitting with my sister Abby. As the judge called the court to order, I felt Sophie's hand slip into mine. Ethan's eyes met mine as he was led in. Gone was the arrogant businessman I'd known. In his place sat a broken man, the weight of his actions evident in the slump of his shoulders. As the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, a collective sigh seemed to ripple through the room. It was over. Finally, truly over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Mrs. Thompson, how do you feel about the verdict? One shouted. I paused, considering my words carefully. Today isn't about winning or losing. It's about truth and accountability. My family has been through hell, but we're survivors. We'll heal, and we'll move forward. Later that evening, as Sophie, Margaret, Abby, and I sat around the dinner table in our new home, a sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't perfect. Margaret still had moments of confusion, and Sophie was in therapy to work through her trust issues. But we were together, supporting each other. I have something for you, Margaret said, her eyes twinkling as she handed me a small box. Inside was a delicate silver locket. It's beautiful, I gasped. Open it, she urged. I did, and tiny photograph inside. Me, Sophie, and Margaret, taken just last week. On the other side was engraved, "Family is love, not blood." Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at these three incredible women. My daughter, who'd shown such courage in facing the truth about her father. My sister, who'd stood by me when I had nothing. And Margaret, who'd chosen to embrace me as a daughter, despite everything. I know it's been a hard road, Margaret said, her voice quavering slightly. But I want you to know, Amanda, that you've shown us all what true strength looks like. You didn't just survive, you helped us all find a way forward. Sophie nodded, squeezing my hand. Mom, I'm so sorry for doubting you. You've taught me what real integrity means." "Oh, sweetie," I pulled her close. "We've all learned so much, and we'll keep learning together." As the evening wore on, filled with laughter and shared memories, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path ahead wasn't clear. We still had financial challenges to face and emotional scars to heal, but I knew we'd face it as a family. Later, as I stood on the back porch, gazing at the stars, Abby joined me. "Penny for your thoughts, sis?" I smiled, fingering the locket around my neck. "I was just thinking, for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. It's like I can breathe again." Abby nudged my shoulder. "You know, when this all started, I was so worried about you. But watching you stand up for yourself, fight for the truth, I've never been prouder to call you my sister." As we hugged, I realized that this journey, painful as it had been, had given me something precious, a deeper understanding of my own strength and the unbreakable bonds of true family. The road ahead would have its challenges, but I was ready to face them. With Sophie, Margaret, and Abby by my side, I knew that whatever life threw our way, we'd face it together, stronger, wiser, and filled with love. As I closed the porch door and rejoined my family inside, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held for us all. "She's nothing but a glorified maid with no education," Justin said, his voice dripping with disdain. My blood boiled instantly. I glanced around the dinner table, shocked by the cold words that shattered the air. Justin's parents, Evelyn and Richard, exchanged uneasy glances. They didn't try to hide their discomfort. "Justin, that's enough," Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly. "Well, it's the truth, Mom," he replied, shrugging as if it was the most natural statement in the world. "Eva, you know I'm just being honest." I looked at him, my mind racing. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. His charming smile and tender gestures now seemed like a cruel facade. "Is this really what you think of me?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "Come on, Eva, let's not make a scene. I'm sure they want to know who they're dealing with." I couldn't believe his audacity. After everything. I stopped myself, afraid my voice would crack. My heart pounded as I tried to maintain composure. I glanced at Evelyn and Richard, looking for any sign of support. Evelyn's eyes held regret, while Richard stared at his plate, seemingly lost for words. Justin's smirk was the final straw. I pushed back my chair and stood up, my hands trembling. "Excuse me," I muttered, heading towards the front door. I needed fresh air. Needed to think. "Eva, wait," Evelyn called after me. I paused, feeling her gentle hand on my shoulder. "I don't know what Justin was thinking. Please, don't judge us by his words. He can be difficult." I looked at her, her eyes sincere. "He's never talked to me like that before," I said. I don't know what to think." "Give it time, dear," she said softly. "These things have a way of sorting themselves out." I nodded weakly and stepped outside, the cool evening air hitting my face. I never imagined that the man I moved in with would turn out to be so condescending. His words echoed in my mind, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. Justin soon joined me on the porch, pretending everything was fine. "You didn't have to leave," he said casually, as if dismissing the whole affair. "I can't believe you said that," I replied, my voice quivering with suppressed anger. "Do you really think so little of me?" "Eva, you need to understand something," he said, his tone shifting to one of mild irritation. "My parents needed to know about your background. There's nothing wrong with being honest." "I need some time alone," I said, cutting him off. I couldn't stand to hear any more. He raised his hands defensively. "Fine, but don't be dramatic." I watched him walk back inside, the door closing softly behind him. I felt the weight of his words pressing down on me. This wasn't the first time I had felt his condescending attitude, but it had never been so blatant. I thought about my mother Sharon waiting at home for me. Her frail condition and need for constant care already wore heavily on my spirit. Justin's words cut deeper than he knew, hitting the raw nerves of my insecurities and fears. I thought I had found a partner, someone to build a life with, but tonight's events tore down that illusion. As I stood on the porch, the night air cooling my heated skin, I resolved not to let this define me. No matter how charming or successful Justin was, I had my dignity. I glanced back at the house one last time. This would not be the end, but a beginning. One way or another, I would find a way through this. I'm out there saving lives while you flounder in mediocrity, Justin snarled as he tossed his keys on the kitchen counter. The sound of metal clanging echoed through the apartment, emphasizing his words. I froze, the dishcloth in my hand halfway to the sink. Excuse me? You heard me, Eva, he said, rolling his eyes. Do you know how tiring it is to come home to this mess after a 12-hour shift? I glanced around the spotless kitchen. Nothing was out of place. What mess? I asked, exasperated. He stalked toward me, pointing a finger in my face. Your life is a mess. Look at you, a high school dropout, waiting tables and cleaning houses. Do you think that's impressive? My heart pounded as his words sank in. The man I fell in love with was nowhere to be seen. I contribute to this household, too, I managed to say, my voice trembling with anger. Justin scoffed. Barely. I cover most of the bills. What you make is peanuts. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger build up inside me, but I decided to stay calm. I'm doing the best I can, Justin, and I'm also caring for my mom. That's not nothing. He shook his head, laughing bitterly. Always your mother. You're drowning in mediocrity, and you drag me down with you. I turned away, blinking back tears. His words were like knives cutting deep. I could hear him behind me, the sound of his heavy breathing filling the room. You know what, I said, refusing to let him see me break down. Maybe you'd be happier if I wasn't here. Maybe I would, he spat out. Or maybe you could actually try to better yourself. I planted my feet firmly on the ground, turning back to face him. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I once adored. I thought we were partners, I said quietly. But you see me as a burden. Eva, open your eyes, he snapped. Partners? Mutual respect? That's fantasy. Welcome to reality. The sting of his words left a bitter taste in my mouth. I need some air, I said, brushing past him to the front door. I could feel his eyes burning into my back but didn't turn around. Out on the street, the cool night air felt like freedom. I tried to piece together how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. The charming, supportive man I met through the dating app was now nothing more than a controlling tyrant. As I walked, my mind drifted to the early days of our relationship, the sweet text messages, the late-night talks, and the promises that now felt hollow. I needed to talk to Sharon. The next afternoon, during one of my rare breaks, I visited her at the old family home. She lay on the couch, looking frail but cheerful. Hey, Mom, I said, trying to mask my stress with a smile. Hey, sweetheart, she replied, patting the space beside her. I sat down, and she immediately noticed something was off. Tell me what's wrong, she said. I sighed, leaning my head back against the couch. It's Justin, Mom. He's changed, or maybe I'm just now seeing the real him. She frowned, her eyes filled with concern. What happened? The way he talks to me, I began, pausing to find the right words without breaking down. He treats me like I'm less than him, like I'm nothing. She reached out and squeezed my hand. You're not nothing, Eva. You are strong, stronger than you know. Her words brought tears to my eyes, but I blinked them away. Thanks, Mom. I needed that. We sat there in shared silence, her hand in mine. In that moment, I realized that whatever the future held, I had to be strong, for myself and for her. I would not let Justin's cruelty destroy my spirit. Stop being so useless and get this house in order, Justin barked as he slammed the door behind him. The force of it sent a shiver through the apartment, like an earthquake had struck. Exhaustion turned into raw, seething anger inside me. I gripped the broom tighter, forcing myself not to snap. I've been cleaning all day, and I still have to go take care of Mom, I said, keeping my voice calm as possible. He rolled his eyes. Always an excuse with you, Eva. You think this is hard? Try doing what I do for even a day. I'm doing my best, I replied, my voice shaking. Maybe if you could help once in a while. Help? Justin cut me off, laughing bitterly. I'm a surgeon. My time is worth 10 times what yours is. You should be grateful I even talked to you. My fists clenched so tightly around the broom that my knuckles turned white. I turned my back to him, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Taking a deep breath, I began sweeping furiously, each stroke a silent rebellion. You know, my colleagues laugh at me, he sneered. They can't believe I'm stuck with someone like you. His words stung like 1,000 paper cuts. Then why don't you just leave? I muttered under my breath, but loud enough for him to hear. He stormed over, yanking the broom from my hands and tossing it aside. Because, Eva, you need me. You need my money, my status. Without me, you're nothing. I looked up at him, my defiance bubbling to the surface. I don't need you, Justin. I won't be treated like garbage just because you have a fancy title. He stepped closer, invading my space, his eyes narrowing. Without me, you'd be on the streets. Remember that next time you think about mouthing off. The ringing of my phone interrupted the tension. I grabbed it from the counter and saw my mother's number. Relief washed over me, an escape from this prison, albeit temporary. I have to go, I said, brushing past Justin. My mom needs me. Just get out, he hissed, waving me off. Barely worth my time. I walked out the door, his words echoing behind me like a dark cloud. The drive to my mother's was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. How had things turned so sour so quickly? When I arrived at my mother's house, Sharon was struggling to reach something from the top shelf in the kitchen. Hey, Mom, I said, rushing to help her. You should have called me. Thanks, sweetheart, she said, her smile warm but tinged with fatigue. I forced a smile. I'm fine, just busy. How are you feeling today? She sat down at the kitchen table, cradling a cup of tea. I'm okay, but you seem upset. What happened? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words choked in my throat. It's just Justin, I managed to say. He's being impossible again. Her eyes filled with worry. Eva, you don't have to put up with that. You deserve better. I know, Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But it's complicated. I need to figure out how to handle this. Later that night, I found myself back at the apartment, dreading the confrontation that awaited me. Justin was in bed, his back turned to me, clearly uninterested in any kind of reconciliation. I lay down beside him, staring at the ceiling. My mind was made up. I couldn't continue like this. I needed to find out who he really was. If there were secrets, I would uncover them, and then I would make him pay for every degrading word, every humiliating moment. My resolve hardened, fueling a sense of determination I didn't know I had. I would gather the evidence, plan my move, and expose the man who thought he could treat people like disposable objects. Justin was about to learn that even someone floundering in mediocrity could fight back. And win. This isn't just him being mean. This is criminal, I whispered to myself, staring at Justin's laptop screen. The encrypted emails I had decrypted slowly revealed a web of illegal activities that made my skin crawl. I quickly photographed the damning emails with my phone, my hands shaking. I had found everything from organ trafficking deals to bribery transactions. The charming surgeon was nothing more than a dangerous criminal. The front door opened and my heart skipped a beat. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it back into its hiding place just as Justin walked into the room. Eva, he called out, his voice unusually cheerful. What's for dinner? I ordered takeout, I said, forcing a smile, trying to hide the adrenaline coursing through me. He looked at me suspiciously. Why are you acting so weird? Weird, I echoed, my voice steady. I'm just tired, Justin. It's been a long day. He eyed me for a moment before shrugging. Whatever. Make sure you set the table. As I set the table, my mind raced. What would my next move be? But for now, I had to play it cool. I couldn't let him suspect a thing. Later that week, as Justin continued his usual night shifts, I became more meticulous in gathering evidence. I copied files, took photos of documents, and even recorded some of our conversations. The more I uncovered, the more revolted I felt. During one of our dinners, Justin dropped another bomb. I've invited my parents over this weekend, he said casually between bites. We'll have a little family gathering. You can show my mother how useful you can be by preparing everything. I bit back the resentful reply that bubbled up. Sure, Justin, I'll take care of it. As the weekend approached, I prepared meticulously, but not just for the gathering. It was time to turn the tables. When his parents arrived, I greeted them warmly, my heart pounding with anticipation. Evelyn smiled and embraced me, but Richard's stern face showed he wasn't convinced by the domestic facade. The dinner conversation started light, filled with polite chit-chat. I served the meal, trying to time everything perfectly. My pulse quickened as the conversation shifted. Justin, how's work been lately? Richard asked, his tone neutral. Busy as always, Dad, Justin replied, beaming with pride. Saving lives every day. I almost choked on my drink. The hypocrisy was unbearable, but I held my tongue. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. As the evening wore on, Justin's arrogance grew. Finally, he made a comment that made my blood boil. "You know," he said, glancing at me, "it's hard to balance such an important career with someone who barely contributes." That was it. I couldn't take any more. "Actually, Justin," I said, my voice steady, "I think it's time your parents knew the whole truth." Evelyn looked alarmed, and Richard's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about, Eva?" Justin asked, his voice low and threatening. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. "I found these on your laptop. Care to explain?" His face paled as the images of the incriminating emails flashed on the screen. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth, while Richard's face turned red with fury. "What is this, Justin?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. Justin stammered, trying to come up with a lie, but the evidence was overwhelming. "It's not what it looks like," he pleaded. But the room had already turned against him. Richard stood up, his face stern. "Is this true, Justin? Have you been involved in illegal activities?" Justin's silence spoke volumes. Evelyn burst into tears, and Richard's eyes filled with disappointed anger. How could you? The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. I felt a surge of vindication, knowing that the truth was finally out in the open. Justin's world was about to crumble, and I was ready for the fallout. "You think your title gives you power over me? Over anyone?" I stated, my calm voice slicing through the tension-filled room like a knife. Justin's parents were still digesting the images on my phone. Evelyn's tear-streaked face looked shattered, while Richard appeared as if he might burst from anger. But none of that mattered now. "Eva, you better watch your mouth," Justin snarled, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and rage. "Enough is enough. Time to turn the tables," I said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "You've treated me like dirt for too long, and now everyone will see who you really are." Justin lunged towards me, but Richard stepped in. "You stay right where you are," he bellowed, his face inches from Justin's. "Have you lost your mind, son?" "Dad, it's not what it looks like," Justin tried to explain, his voice lacking the confidence it usually held. He looked cornered like a trapped animal. Evelyn sobbed quietly, her body shaking. "Justin, how could you? We raised you better than this." Justin's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "Eva, get out, now," he growled, trying to regain control. "No," I replied firmly. "I'm not leaving. You are the one who will face the consequences." Richard turned to me, his voice softer but firm. "Eva, I'm sorry for what you've been through, but we need to get to the bottom of this." I nodded, taking a step back to let the conversation unfold. Justin's face looked strained, the facade of the charming doctor cracking at the edges. "Justin, you must come clean," Richard insisted, his stern judicial tone leaving no room for debate. "You don't understand, Dad," Justin said, floundering. "I did it to help people. These organ trades saved lives." Evelyn gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Justin, that's illegal. You risked everything, everyone, for money?" Justin's face flushed with a mix of anger and shame. "It's not just about the money, Mom. It's complicated." "Complicated?" Evelyn cried out. "This is criminal." The room grew silent for a moment, the weight of what had been said hanging in the air like a dark storm cloud. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. Finally, Justin was facing the consequences for his actions. Richard shook his head, looking his son dead in the eye. "You need to turn yourself in. It's the only way to atone for what you've done." Justin's face turned pale, and he took a step back. "Dad, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Richard said, his voice firm. "If you don't, I will." Justin's eyes widened in desperation. He turned to me, his expression a mix of hatred and pleading. "Eva, please, don't do this." I held my ground, meeting his gaze with unyielding resolve. "This isn't about revenge anymore, Justin. This is about right and wrong." Evelyn stood and placed a hand on Justin's arm, tears streaming down her face. "Justin, we love you, but you must take responsibility for your actions." "Traitor," Justin's eyes screamed at me, but his lips remained pressed in a thin line. He turned towards his father, defeated. "Fine, if that's what it takes." Richard pulled out his phone and dialed quickly, each number a final nail in the coffin of Justin's charade. "I'm calling our attorney. We're going to sort this out legally." As Richard's voice echoed through the room, making arrangements, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. This was just the beginning, but at least the truth was out. I watched as Justin stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. The man who had once controlled me was now facing the collapse of everything he held dear. For once, I felt hope. Hope for justice, for my mother, and for myself. My future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would not be a victim any longer. Is this true, Justin? Have you been trading lives for money? Evelyn's voice trembled with disbelief as she clutched her son's arm. The dining room felt like a courtroom. Justin stood there, cornered and pale, his eyes cast downward. Mom, he stammered, searching for words that wouldn't come. The truth finally out in the open, I thought, feeling a surge of vindication. It's all true, I stated, my voice clear. Justin's been involved in illegal organ trafficking and bribery. I have all the evidence. Richard hung up the phone. The attorney is on his way. Until then, Justin, you need to start explaining yourself. Justin flinched. Dad, it's more complicated than you think. I didn't have a choice. Choice? You always have a choice, Richard fired back, and you chose crime. Evelyn sobbed quietly, holding her forehead. This can't be happening. How could you do this to your patients, to us? Justin clenched his fists, his facade of control entirely shattered. It wasn't just for money, he said, his voice hollow. Some of these people were desperate. Lives were saved. And how many lives were ruined? I retorted, locking eyes with him. You think your good intentions justify breaking the law? Exploiting people? Richard raised a hand. Eva's right. Whatever your reasoning, it doesn't excuse this. Justin's gaze shifted around the room, looking for an ally, but finding none. Dad, Mom, please, I can make this right. Just give me a chance. No, Justin, Richard said quietly. You must take responsibility for this. Our family name is at stake, and more importantly, you need to atone for your actions. A tense silence filled the room as Justin seemed to crumple under the weight of his father's words. It was strange seeing this once powerful man now cornered and vulnerable. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Richard glanced at me, nodding for confirmation. That must be the attorney. I opened the door to find not just the family attorney, but also a police officer standing beside him. Wordlessly, I stepped back to let them in. Richard, the attorney said, shaking hands and nodding solemnly at Evelyn. I've briefed the officer about the situation. Justin's eyes widened in panic. Dad, you called the police? I had to, Richard said firmly, though his voice softened slightly. It's the right thing to do. The officer stepped forward. Justin Parker, you're under arrest for your involvement in illegal organ trafficking and bribery. You have the right to remain silent. Justin looked at his parents one last time, desperation in his eyes. Please, help me. Evelyn's tears flowed freely, but she said nothing. Richard sighed deeply. We'll get you a lawyer, Justin, but you must face the consequences. As the officer pulled out the handcuffs, Justin didn't resist. His eyes found mine, pleading silently, but I felt no pity. This was justice. I'm done being your victim, Justin. Now, the world knows who you really are, I said quietly, feeling the weight of the last few months lift off my shoulders. As they led Justin away, Evelyn collapsed into Richard's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He held her, his face a mix of heartbreak and resolve. You did the right thing, Richard said, looking at me. No one should have to live in fear or be treated like that. Thank you for your courage. I nodded, unable to form words. Justice was messy, and hearts were broken, but it was a necessary step. I had exposed the truth, and in doing so had freed myself from Justin's cruel grip. Outside, as the police car pulled away, I watched with a strange sense of peace. Justin had been powerful and ruthless, but now he was simply a man facing the consequences of his actions. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. The media frenzy hit like a hurricane the day after Justin's arrest. Reporters swarmed our apartment building, their cameras flashing as they peppered me with questions. Eva, how long did you know? What did you uncover? How do you feel now that it's all out in the open? I'm done being your victim, Justin. Now the world knows who you really are, I had said, and it was now more true than ever. As I looked at the chaos around me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Justice would be served, even if it was a messy process. A police officer managed to clear a path for me. Eva Hall, Detective Mills would like to speak with you. Thank you, I replied, following the officer to an unmarked car parked discreetly around the corner. Detective Sarah Mills was waiting inside, her expression unreadable. She motioned for me to sit. Eva, I need to hear everything from the beginning. What you found, how you found it, All of it. I took a seat, my heart still pounding from the chaos outside. I found Justin's emails, I began. He'd been encrypting messages about illegal organ trades and bribes. I took photos of everything. Detective Mills nodded. We've reviewed the evidence you provided and begun our investigation. Thanks to you, we're already making progress on tracking down his accomplices. A sense of relief washed over me. What happens now? Now we gather more evidence and prepare the case against him. It's going to be a long process, Eva. Are you ready for that? I took a deep breath. Yes, I'm ready. I've come this far. I won't back down now. Detective Mills smiled faintly. Good. You've done an incredible thing, Eva. Not many people would have had the courage to do what you did. I nodded, determined. Thank you, Detective. We spent the next few hours going over the details, piece by piece. It was exhausting, reliving each painful discovery, but I knew it was necessary. By the time we finished, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the chaotic scene outside. Finally, outside, I glanced at the dispersing crowd of reporters, realizing it was time to reclaim my life. I walked back to our apartment, every step solidifying my resolve. That evening, I called my mom. Hey, Mom, it's over. Justin's been arrested. Her relief was palpable. I'm so proud of you, Eva. You've been so strong. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, my voice breaking a little. It's been hard, but it was worth it. Come home, sweetheart, she replied, her voice warm. We can start over together. I'll be there soon, Mom. As I packed up my belongings, the emptiness of the apartment struck me. This place, once filled with promise and love, now held only bitter memories and broken dreams. I had to leave it all behind to truly move forward. The next morning, I woke up early, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. I looked around the apartment one last time before stepping out the door with my bags. Outside, the air was crisp, and the world seemed strangely quiet without the buzz of media frenzy. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm done being your victim, Justin, I whispered to myself as I walked to my car. Now, it's time to live my life. As I drove away, the city skyline faded into the distance, along with the chaos that had consumed my life for so long. There was a long road ahead, full of uncertainty and challenges, but for the first time, I felt ready to face it. I arrived at my mom's place, a sense of peace filling me as she welcomed me with open arms. I hugged her tightly, knowing that together we could rebuild our lives. This was just the beginning. Justice had been served, and now it was time to find a new path, one filled with hope, strength, and a future I could finally control. Freedom tastes a little bittersweet, but it's mine, I thought, standing in the doorway of my mother's house. A wave of calm washed over me, something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Eva, come inside, Mom called, her voice warm and comforting. Dinner's almost ready. Walking into the kitchen, I was struck by how different this felt compared to the cold, tense atmosphere of the apartment I had shared with Justin. Here, everything smelled of home, of safety and love. How are you holding up? Mom asked, setting a pot of soup on the table. Better, I said, helping her set the table. It's strange, but I feel like I can breathe again. She smiled, wrapping me in a hug. We'll get through this together. I felt a sudden swell of gratitude for her support. Thanks, Mom, for everything. Over the next few weeks, life began to take on a new rhythm. I found part-time work at a local cafe, much less stressful than the multiple jobs I juggled before. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to care for Mom. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Evelyn. Eva, I wanted to apologize for everything. We had no idea what Justin was capable of. Thank you, Evelyn, I replied, surprised by her call. I'm just glad the truth is finally out. We'd like to help if you'll let us, she continued. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need. I hesitated. Accepting their help felt complicated, yet I knew it would make things easier. I appreciate it. Let's take it one step at a time. Days turned into weeks, and I visited Justin's parents occasionally. Despite everything, they offered genuine support, wanting to right the wrongs their son had committed. Evelyn even helped care for Mom sometimes, her presence a comfort we hadn't expected. One evening, Richard showed up with a somber expression. Eva, I wanted to tell you that we've arranged a fund for you and Sharon. It's the least we can do. Tears welled up in my eyes. This gesture overwhelmed me. Thank you, Richard. This means more than you know. He nodded, his face reflecting the weight of his own family's crisis. We owe it to you. Despite the challenges, a sense of justice and closure began to fill the void left by Justin's abuse. With each contribution from Evelyn and Richard, our lives became a little less burdened. It was a strange alliance forged out of mutual tragedy and need for forgiveness. One night, as I tucked Mom into bed, she grabbed my hand. I'm so proud of you, Eva. You've done so much for us. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Thanks, Mom. I just want us to be happy. The news covered Justin's court trial extensively. Watching from our living room, I saw him being sentenced. There he was, the man who had tried to tear me down, now paying for his crimes. Freedom indeed tasted bittersweet, but justice was powerful. As days turned into months, I found strength I never knew I had. My job at the cafe became more stable, providing a steady income that allowed me more time with Mom. Her health remained fragile, but our bond grew deeper every day. Evelyn and Richard's continued support transformed from financial help to genuine friendship. We had become unlikely allies in the aftermath of a shared catastrophe. One weekend, as I sat with Mom on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze, she looked at me with a smile. What do you see for your future, Eva? I paused, considering her question. I'm not sure yet, but for now I see us together, happy and free from the past. She nodded, her eyes reflecting pride. That sounds just right to me. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The broken promise from my past had led me to a new beginning, one filled with resilience, determination, and love. And for the first time, I could truly see a brighter future. A future that was mine to build, step by step. I thought you were cleverer, Eva, marrying Michael. Guess you're just another gullible woman. I tightened my grip on the checkbook. What do you mean, Eva? Aaron took a step closer, an icy smirk on his face. Enough! Hand over the checkbook now, or we finalize the divorce. You have no idea what you're starting here. I spat back, feeling my pulse quicken. With a dismissive chuckle, he shrugged. We'll see about that. 5 years. That's how long it's been since Michael's accident. Aaron, Michael's best friend, was there from the start, supporting me through the grief. A year after Michael died, I remarried. Aaron seemed like a lifesaver, stepping in just when I needed someone. I convinced myself that he loved me. But now, with his demanding eyes locked on the checkbook, I saw it all clearly. The subtle lies, the mounting demands. Aaron was never in this for love. He wanted control, and I had let him weave his web around me. I handed over the checkbook slowly, watching Aaron's triumphant smile. Inside, I was boiling over, but outside I maintained my calm. Aaron flipped through, checking the entries. Good. Now let's talk about the account changes I've been considering for us. There it was again, that word us, but every time he said it, I felt more like a pawn than a partner. I didn't respond immediately, letting the tension linger. Michael would have been smarter about this, he added, his eyes not meeting mine. Those words hit like a punch to the stomach. Michael, always the comparison. Taking a deep breath, I willed my voice to stay steady. What exactly did you have in mind, Aaron? Just some reallocations, some investments. You'll be fine with it, he said, pocketing the checkbook. Investments. Right, for his mother's medical bills are more likely to continue his string of lavish purchases. What had happened to the man I thought I knew? Aaron, we need to talk. Seriously. I was losing my patience. This isn't working. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, it's working just fine for me. I couldn't hold back any longer. No, it's not, Aaron. You spend money like water. You're never home, and when you are, you're unbearable. This isn't a marriage. It's a transaction. You're draining me dry. Aaron's face twisted, his charming facade shattered. You think you can threaten me? You don't want this getting uglier than it already is. I took a step back, stunned by the venom in his voice. Are you threatening me? Just giving you a reality check, he said, voice low and menacing. Hand over the life insurance money, get ready for a nasty fight. It was in that moment I understood the full depth of his deceit. No more pretending, no more lies. With every word he spoke, he made my resolve stronger. I would outsmart him. Aaron didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. I'd do whatever it took to secure my life from him. He might think he's in control, but that was about to change. The first few months with Aaron were like a dream. We redecorated the house together, planned weekend getaways, and cooked dinner side by side. I began to believe that love had found me again. But gradually things shifted. Aaron started coming home late. At first he had excuses about meetings running over and work piling up. Then the reasons became vaguer. I stayed up waiting, but the silence was the loudest answer I got. One evening I confronted him as he walked in after midnight. "Aaron, we need to talk. What's going on? Why are you always late?" He shrugged, a hint of annoyance in his eyes. "I've told you, Eva, work has been busy." "Every night?" "Yes, every night." His voice rose, and for a moment I saw a stranger standing there. "Why can't you understand? I'm doing this for us." I wanted to believe him, but his words felt hollow. The tension over money began soon after. Aaron demanded more allowance, explaining it was for his sick mother. I agreed without questioning, until I noticed the credit card statements. Expensive dinners, nightclubs, casinos. He wasn't helping his mother. He was enjoying himself. "Aaron," I said, showing him the bills one morning, "these charges don't seem right. We can't afford this lifestyle." He snatched the papers from my hand. "I know what I'm doing, Eva. Mind your own business." "But this is our money," I protested. "We need to be responsible." Responsible, tearing the papers in half. "You think you can lecture me about responsibility? You were the one sobbing over Michael's death. I'm the one keeping this house together." I bit my lip, anger welling up. Since when is wasting money responsible? Aaron's face darkened. "You don't get it, do you? I'm done explaining myself." His attitude grew colder, his absences longer. The man I thought cared about me was fading, replaced by someone I barely knew. One night I returned home to find the living room lights dimmed. Aaron was at my laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Just managing our finances," he replied, not looking up. "On my private account?" I stepped closer, fury boiling over. "Get out of there, now!" He finally turned to face me, eyes narrowing. "You think you're smart hiding money from me? Well, think again. I have every right to be here." "You have no right to access my private accounts." "We're married, Eva. Everything you have is mine, too." "No, Aaron, that's not how it works. You're crossing a line. Give me the life insurance money from Michael's passing, or it's over. Your choice." His words were a slap in the face. I knew I couldn't trust him. That night, as Aaron slept soundly, I lay awake, plotting my next move. I'd protect myself and my future. There was no running from this now. I would outsmart him, and he wouldn't see it coming. I started working part-time at a local bookstore. It wasn't much, but every dollar mattered now. Aaron had drained our accounts to the point we were barely making ends meet. He spent more time out than in, and I knew I needed a backup plan. When Aaron wasn't home, my mind raced. I stashed bits of my earnings into a secret bank account he didn't know about. It was risky, but it gave me some control, a small fragment of hope. One evening, I got home from work, tired but satisfied. As I entered the house, I noticed the eerie silence. Aaron's car was in the driveway, yet the house felt empty. I went straight to my desk and gasped. Aaron was there, logged into my bank account. "What are you doing?" I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. He didn't even flinch. "I'm managing our money." "You're reckless, Eva. You need guidance." "You can't just take control of my account." I moved closer, trying to pull the laptop away. "Your account?" He sneered, gripping the sides of the laptop. "We're married. What's yours is mine." I yanked the laptop out of his hands. "Enough, Aaron. You're not getting your hands on this money. It was Michael's insurance payout, for God's sake." "Michael's dead," he spat back, venom in his voice. "And if you don't watch it, you'll regret it. Divorce, Eva. Think about it." "I have thought about it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And maybe that's exactly what I want." Aaron laughed, stepping back. "Go ahead, Eva, but remember, I'll take every last cent. You think the courts will side with you? You're nothing without me." Shaken, I watched as he stormed out. My heart ached with a mixture of fear and anger. That night, I made a decision. Aaron wouldn't get another cent from me. I had to protect myself, and I had to do it now. The next morning, I visited the bank. "I need to change my account details," I told the teller, hands trembling. New passwords, everything. The teller nodded, helping me secure my money. Leaving the bank, I felt a surge of resolve. When I got home, Aaron was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, noticing the determination in my eyes. "What are you up to now, Eva?" "Just making sure you don't steal any more from me." He smirked. "Good luck with that. You can't outsmart me. But I knew I could. I pretended to comply with his wishes, all while closing the gaps. I packed a bag with essentials and a few precious memories of Michael. Then I called Jessie, my trusted friend. I need a place to stay, Jess, I said, desperation in my voice. Come over, Eva. We'll figure this out together. Leaving Aaron behind, I drove to Jessie's house, the weight of uncertainty lifting with every mile. This was only the beginning. I was ready to fight back, and Aaron was about to learn just how strong I could be. At Jessie's house, I finally felt a sense of safety. Jessie welcomed me with open arms. Stay as long as you need, Eva. You know I've got your back. Thanks, Jess, I said, setting my bag down. I don't know what I'd do without you. We'll get through this, she assured me, patting my shoulder. Let's get you settled. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I need to contact my lawyer, I told Jessie over breakfast. Good idea. Cover all your bases. She nodded. And what about Aaron? I sighed. He's not backing down. I need to be careful. Jessie handed me her phone. Call your lawyer now. The sooner you start the process, the better. I dialed the number and explained my situation. I need to initiate divorce proceedings, and I need to protect my assets. Understood, my lawyer said. We'll start the paperwork. Make sure Aaron has no access to your accounts. Already done, I replied, feeling a bit more secure. And I'll need to notify the authorities. Aaron's threats are escalating. Keep records of everything he says or does, the lawyer advised. It'll help your case. After ending the call, I felt a sense of purpose. Jessie and I put together all the documentation, organized my finances, and ensured that Aaron couldn't touch a dime. As the days went by, Aaron became more desperate. He called repeatedly, leaving angry voicemails. Eva, you can't run forever. Come back now, or you'll regret it. I saved every message, each one a piece of evidence. One evening, I received an email notification. Aaron had attempted to access our joint account, but was denied. His frustration was palpable even through the screen. What's the next step? Jessie asked, seeing the look on my face. Divorce papers, I said firmly. He needs to know I'm serious. Sending those papers felt like lifting a weight off my shoulders. I knew Aaron would be furious, but it was a necessary step. A few days later, Jessie and I were sitting together when my phone buzzed. It was Aaron. I answered, putting it on speaker. You think you're smart, don't you? Sending those papers? He was livid. I'm protecting myself, Aaron, I replied calmly. This is over. No, it's not, he snapped. You'll pay for this, I swear. We'll see, I said and hung up. Jessie looked at me, concerned. He'll get desperate now, Eva. Be prepared. I am, I assured her. I have to be. A sense of calm settled over me. I was taking control, no longer a victim to Aaron's games. Each step I took solidified my resolve. With Jessie's support, I began the process of revoking Aaron's access to everything connected to me. I changed locks, updated passwords, and informed everyone involved about the situation. Aaron's courage crumbled slowly but surely. He found himself cut off, no longer able to manipulate or control me. I watched from a distance as his fake facade started to fall apart, revealing the true coward behind the mask. I knew the ultimate face-off was coming, but until then, I kept my defenses strong, prepared for whatever Aaron had left in his arsenal. This was only the beginning, and I was ready for the fight. Aaron's arrogance boiled over when he realized I had sealed off all his access to the finances. One evening, as Jessie and I were catching up on the latest details, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? I answered tentatively. You think you've won, Eva? Aaron's voice was seething with anger. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. That's your opinion, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. What do you want, Aaron? I want what's mine, and you will give it to me, he hissed. You're not getting anything, Aaron. It's over. I hung up, feeling a mixture of fear and strength. Jessie looked at me, concern in her eyes. He's not going to give up easily, Eva. Be careful. I know, I sighed, but I'm ready. The next day, I decided to take more decisive action. I went to the local police station to explain my situation. Officer James listened carefully, taking notes. Based on what you've told me, we can file a restraining order against him, he said, handing me the paperwork. It won't stop his calls, but it might make him think twice before showing up. Thank you, I said, filling out the forms. This means a lot. Returning to Jessie's place, I felt a little more secure. That evening, Jessie and I were having dinner when there was a loud knock at the door. Jessie peeked through the window and turned pale. "It's Aaron and his mother, Lydia." "Open up, Eva," Aaron shouted from outside. "We need to talk." I stood my ground. "Go away, Aaron. You have no right to be here." Lydia's voice cut through the air. "You'll regret this, Eva. We've done nothing wrong." "You've done plenty wrong," I snapped back. "Leave or I'll call the police." Aaron pounded on the door harder. "You can't hide forever." With shaky hands, I dialed 911. "There's a man at my door threatening me. I have a restraining order against him." "We're on our way," the dispatcher assured me. I hung up and glared at the door. "You're making this worse for yourself, Aaron." Minutes later, the police arrived. Officers led a furious Aaron and a downcast Lydia away. Aaron's final words, "This isn't over," echoed as they drove off. Jessie hugged me tightly. "You did the right thing, Eva. Stay strong." The next morning, I sent the divorce papers through certified mail, ensuring Aaron's access to everything connected to me was revoked. I needed to make sure he understood there was no way back. Later that week, Lydia's car was gone from Aaron's driveway. Word had spread quickly about their confrontation with the police. Jessie and I sat in the living room, a sense of relief washing over me. "It's not going to be easy, but I think we've turned a corner," I said. "You've got this, Eva," Jessie reassured me. "You're stronger than you know." I nodded, the weight of uncertainty lifting. The storm was far from over, but for the first time in a long while I felt ready to face it head-on. Every step forward was a step away from Aaron's toxic grip. The ultimate showdown was on the horizon, and I was prepared to win. A few days after the police escorted Aaron and Lydia away, I returned to work at the bookstore, hoping for a sense of normalcy. It was a quiet afternoon when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jessie. "Aaron and Lydia here now. Be careful." My heart pounded. Moments later, the bell above the shop's door jingled, and they stormed in. Aaron's eyes were cold, and Lydia's face was twisted with anger. "You can't run, Eva," Aaron said, striding towards the counter. "You think you can just cut me off and hide?" I stood my ground. "This is not your place, Aaron. Leave, or I'll call the police again." Lydia slammed her hand on the counter. "You're making a mistake. You think you're so clever, but you'll lose everything." I clenched my fists. "Get out, now." "We had a deal, Eva," Aaron sneered, leaning closer. "You agreed to share everything, but you've gone behind my back." "No, Aaron, you broke our trust," I shot back. "You lied and manipulated me. Now you're facing the consequences." "Consequences?" Lydia spat. "You'll regret dragging my family through the mud. You have no proof of anything." I looked her in the eye. "I have more than enough proof. You impersonated me at the bank, committed fraud. You and Aaron will pay for this." Aaron's face twisted with rage. "You don't scare us, Eva. We can ruin you." I held up my phone, recording their every word. "Say all you want, but this is going to the authorities. You'll pay for everything you've done." The door pushed open and my boss, Mr. Reed, stepped in. He took one look at the scene and approached. "Is there a problem here?" "These people were just leaving," I said firmly, glaring at Aaron and Lydia. Aaron let out a bitter laugh. "You haven't heard the last of this," Lydia added. "You made the wrong enemies, Eva." Mr. Reed folded his arms, towering over them. "You heard her. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." Aaron and Lydia stormed out, muttering curses under their breath. I sagged against the counter, relief flooding through me. "You okay?" Mr. Reed asked, concern in his eyes. "Thank you," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'm fine. Just some unresolved issues." He nodded. "If they come back, don't hesitate to call for help." I watched as Aaron and Lydia sped away, their threats ringing in my ears. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Their desperation was clear. It only made me stronger. That evening, I met with my lawyer and handed over the latest evidence. They showed up at my workplace, made threats. I recorded it all, I explained. He nodded, a grim smile on his face. "This strengthens our case. We'll bring everything to light in court." Leaving his office, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I was ready for the next step. Aaron and Lydia had tried to intimidate me, but they were the ones who would pay dearly. As I drove back to Jessie's, my phone rang. It was her. "Everything okay, Eva?" "Yeah, everything's fine. Just had a run-in with Aaron and Lydia at work, but we're moving forward." "Good," Jessie said. "Stay strong. You're almost there." "I will," I promised, feeling the weight of her support. The ultimate showdown loomed on the horizon, and I knew I wouldn't face it alone. The fight for justice and peace had only just begun, but I was more than ready to see it through. The courtroom was packed. Aaron and Lydia sat across from me, their eyes burning with indignation. This was it, the moment of truth. My lawyer, Mr. Carter, stood and presented our case. Your Honor, we have clear evidence of fraud and deceit committed by Aaron and Lydia against my client, Eva. They have manipulated finances, attempted illegal access to accounts, and made explicit threats. Aaron's lawyer tried to defend him. Your Honor, these accusations are exaggerated. Aaron was just managing shared finances, and any accusations of fraud are unfounded. Unfounded? Mr. Carter countered, handing over the recording. This recording, taken by Eva, explicitly captures Aaron and Lydia's threats and admissions of their actions. The judge leaned forward, listening intently. Aaron's face fell as his own voice echoed through the courtroom, spouting hate and threats. Lydia's expression turned cold, realization dawning on her. Enough, the judge said, raising a hand. Turning to Aaron and Lydia, he continued, I have heard enough to make my decision. Aaron looked panicked. Your Honor, I was under a lot of stress. I didn't mean those things. It's too late for excuses, the judge replied sternly. The evidence is clear. You have committed fraud and shown a clear pattern of manipulation and abuse. Lydia stood up, desperation in her eyes. Please, Your Honor, we didn't mean any harm. Sit down, the judge commanded, and Lydia obeyed, her face ashen. The judge's gavel came down with a sense of finality. Aaron and Lydia are to repay the misappropriated funds and will face legal consequences for their fraudulent actions. I breathed a sigh of relief. It was over. Justice had been served. Aaron's face crumbled, tears of anger and disbelief streaming down his cheeks. Lydia looked defeated, her plans falling apart before her eyes. Outside the courthouse, Mr. Carter gave me a reassuring smile. You did well, Eva. This is a significant victory. Thank you, I said, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Now you need to focus on rebuilding your life, Mr. Carter advised. You've shown incredible strength. Walking away from the courthouse, I saw Aaron being led away, handcuffed. He caught my eye, his rage clear. You haven't seen the last of me, he growled. I didn't reply, just kept walking. His power over me was gone. That evening, Jessie and I celebrated quietly. To new beginnings, she toasted. To freedom, I echoed, clinking glasses. Aaron's downfall was public and complete. He lost his job, his reputation, and now faced a significant financial penalty. Lydia withdrew into isolation, her social standing tarnished beyond repair. My life was far from perfect, but I felt hopeful for the first time in years. The storm had passed, leaving behind the wreckage of Aaron's deceit. I was ready to rebuild, stronger and wiser than before. As I went to bed that night, I couldn't help but smile. The fight was over, the battle won. And while Aaron and Lydia faced the consequences of their actions, I had reclaimed my life. The scars would heal, and with each passing day, I would find peace and strength anew. The weeks after the court ruling were a whirlwind. Life slowly started to piece itself back together. I stabilized my job at the bookstore, dived into work, and found solace in the daily routine. Jessie remained my rock, always there with a reassuring word or a comforting hug. One afternoon, while shelving some books, a soft-spoken voice interrupted my thoughts. Excuse me, could you help me find The Great Gatsby? I turned to see a tall man with gentle eyes and a warm smile. Sure, it's just over here, I said, leading him to the classics section. Thank you, he said, looking thoughtfully at the books. I'm Patrick, by the way. Eva, I replied, shaking his hand. Do you need help with anything else? Patrick smiled. Just looking for something good to read. Any recommendations? We spent the next few minutes talking about books. There was something calming about him, an air of genuine kindness I hadn't experienced in a long time. Over the coming weeks, Patrick became a regular customer, and then a friend. One evening, as I closed the store, Patrick waited outside. Care for a coffee? He asked, a hopeful expression on his face. Sure. I nodded, feeling a nervous excitement. At the cafe, the conversation flowed easily. Patrick shared his love for literature, his adventures as a travel writer. I listened, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Eva, you're amazing, Patrick said, his eyes sincere. You've been through so much, yet here you are, standing strong. I smiled, blushing slightly. It hasn't been easy, but I've had good friends to help me. He reached across the table, gently squeezing my hand. "I'd like to be one of those friends, if you'll let me." We continued to see each other, slowly building a bond. Patrick was careful, gentle, never pushing, always respectful. It was refreshing, a stark contrast to the chaos Aaron had brought into my life. One afternoon, while sorting through some old photos, I found a picture of Michael. Tears welled up in my eyes. Jessie, noticing my distress, sat beside me. "It's okay to remember, Eva," she said softly. "It's part of healing." "Michael was my safe place," I whispered. "I miss him every day, and it's okay to miss him," Jessie said. "But you deserve happiness, too." It was as if a weight had lifted. The memories of Michael would always be a part of me, but they didn't have to anchor me to the past. They could live alongside new memories, new happiness. Months went by, and Patrick stayed by my side. One day, as we walked through the park, he stopped and looked at me. "Eva, I care deeply for you. Will you let me be a part of your life?" It was a big step, but I felt ready. "Yes, Patrick, I'd like that." In that moment, I realized I had regained control of my life. Aaron's shadow no longer loomed over me. He faced the consequences of his actions, a stark contrast to the bright, hopeful future I was beginning to see. Patrick and I took things slow, building a relationship based on trust and care. I was mindful, ensuring not to repeat past mistakes. Each day felt like a new chapter, filled with cautious optimism and growing confidence. Eva's journey felt complete. From the darkness brought by Aaron, I had emerged stronger, resilient. With Patrick by my side, and Jessie always there to support me, I felt a sense of peace and hope. The storm had passed, and the future looked bright. In the end, it was not just about the revenge or the drama. It was about reclaiming my life, learning to trust again, and finding a balanced new beginning. And in that, I found my true strength. "How could you, Carson? Just days from our anniversary?" I glanced at the crumpled love letter in my hand, bile rising in my throat. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. Carson's face paled. "Margot, please let me explain." "Explain what?" I spat. "That you've been having an affair behind my back? With whom?" My mind raced, trying to make sense of the betrayal. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It was a moment of weakness, a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" I echoed, my voice trembling with rage. "Then what is this?" I waved the damning letter in his face. Carson flinched, his eyes downcast. "I'm sorry, Margot, truly, but we can't tell my mother. Not now. You know how fragile her health is." His mother, Faye, the woman who had embraced me as her own daughter when Carson and I married 5 years ago. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but it was quickly overshadowed by the bitter taste of betrayal. "So, you expect me to just pretend everything is fine?" I asked, incredulous. "To lie to her, to everyone, while you carry on with your affair?" Carson stepped closer, his hands outstretched in a placating gesture. "It's over, I swear. It was a foolish mistake that won't happen again. But if we tell her now, so close to our anniversary, it could devastate her. Please, Margot, for her sake, let's keep this between us for now." I searched his eyes, desperate for any glimmer of truth, any sign that the man I loved was still in there. But all I saw was a stranger, a coward willing to sacrifice my trust for his own selfish reasons. Clenching my jaw, I nodded curtly. "Fine, we'll keep up appearances for now, but mark my words, Carson, this isn't over. You've shattered my trust, and I won't forget that." Relief washed over his features, but I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache in my chest. As he reached out to embrace me, I recoiled, my body rigid with resentment. In that moment, a seed of determination took root within me. I would play along, bide my time, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury. Carson's betrayal would not go unanswered, and he would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. With a steely resolve, I turned away, already plotting my revenge. The anniversary celebration would be a mere charade, a calm before the storm I intended to unleash upon our fractured family. "Margot, I don't trust her taking care of you," Carson murmured as he caressed my swollen belly. "But there's no one else." I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. "I'll be fine, Carson. It's just for a few days while you're away on business." His brow furrowed with concern, but he nodded reluctantly. "All right, but promise me you'll call if she gives you any trouble." As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and Faye's familiar silhouette appeared through the frosted glass. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let her see my apprehension. Margot, darling! Faye enveloped me in a suffocating embrace, her saccharine tone already grating on my nerves. How are my beautiful grandchildren treating you? We're doing well, Faye, I replied, extricating myself from her grip. Thank you for offering to help while Carson is away. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but the smile remained fixed in place. Of course, dear. What are mothers-in-law for? Carson cleared his throat, shooting me a pointed look before turning to his mother. I'll be back in a few days. Take good care of her, Mom. Don't you worry about a thing, Faye cooed, patting his arm reassuringly. Margot and the babies will be in excellent hands. As Carson departed, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that settled in the pit of my stomach. Faye's kindly demeanor was already beginning to fray, revealing glimpses of the true nature I had witnessed during her tirades against me. The first few hours passed without incident, but as the day wore on, Faye's criticisms grew more frequent and cutting. Margot, dear, are you sure you should be eating that? She clucked disapprovingly as I reached for a snack. You wouldn't want to put on too much weight, would you? I bit my tongue, reminding myself that confrontation would only escalate the situation. Later, as I attempted to tidy up the living room, Faye squeaked loudly. Honestly, Margot, is this how you keep house? No wonder Carson is always so stressed. The barbs continued, each one chipping away at my resolve. By evening, I was utterly exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The next morning, Faye's true colors emerged in full force. Up and at 'em, Margot, she trilled, throwing open the curtains to let in the harsh morning light. There's so much to be done around here. Before I could protest, she thrust a list of chores into my hands, a veritable marathon of tasks that would have been daunting for someone without the added strain of a twin pregnancy. But Faye, I'm not sure I should be doing all of this, I ventured cautiously. The doctor said I need to take it easy. Her eyes flashed with barely concealed contempt. Nonsense. A little hard work never hurt anyone. Now get moving, or do you want my grandchildren to grow up in a pigsty? Cowed by her forceful tone, I reluctantly began tackling the list, my back and feet aching with every task. Faye hovered nearby, offering a steady stream of criticism and barbed comments that left me feeling utterly demoralized. By the time Carson returned home, I was a physical and emotional wreck, my body racked with pain and my spirit crushed by Faye's relentless onslaught. As he took in my haggard appearance, concern etched deep lines across his brow. Margot, what happened? Are you all right? Before I could respond, Faye swooped in, her saccharine mask firmly in place. She's just been overdoing it, that's all. You know how nesting can be for expectant mothers. I opened my mouth to protest, to reveal the truth about her abusive behavior, but one withering glance from Faye silenced me. In that moment, I realized that confronting her directly would only lead to further anguish. No, I would bide my time, gather my strength, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury upon Faye and Carson both. Their betrayals would not go unanswered, and they would soon learn the true cost of underestimating my resilience. You're just like your mother, worthless, Faye hissed, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. I don't take orders from a failure. My heart sank as her cruel words echoed in the empty house. Memories of my late mother's gentle smile and unwavering love flooded my mind, a stark contrast to the venom spewing from Faye's lips. How dare you speak about her like that? I managed, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and rage. Faye's lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. What? You think you're better than me? Than this family? You're nothing but a leech, leeching off my son's success. I recoiled as if struck, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. Was this truly how she saw me, after all these years of trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law? I've given everything to this family, I protested, my hands instinctively cradling my swollen belly. These are Carson's children I'm carrying. Faye's gaze dropped to my midsection, her expression twisting into one of disdain. Don't flatter yourself. Once those brats are born, you're out of the picture, I'll make sure of it. A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the bond between a mother and her newborns. The thought was utterly unthinkable. Yet I knew in that moment that Faye was capable of any cruelty imaginable. You're a monster, I whispered, hot tears stinging my eyes. Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. I'm a realist, dear, and the reality is you're not fit to be a mother, not to my grandchildren. In that instant, something shifted within me. The fear and grief that had paralyzed me moments before gave way to a burning determination. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Squaring my shoulders, I met Faye's icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. You're wrong, Faye. I am a mother, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect my children from your poisonous influence. Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. We'll see about that, she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. With shaking fingers, I typed out a message to Carson, pleading for his help, his intervention. But even as I hit send, a part of me knew that this battle could not be won through his involvement alone. Faye's hatred ran too deep, her grip on our family too tight. No, if I wanted to truly free myself and my children from her toxic grasp, I would need to take matters into my own hands. And as I felt the tiny flutters of life within me, I knew that I would stop at nothing to ensure their safety and happiness. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. You think you're special because you're carrying his babies? Once they're born, you're out. Faye's words cut deeper than any knife, slicing through the fragile peace I had managed to maintain. I clutched my swollen belly protectively, as if shielding my unborn children from the venom dripping from her tongue. What are you saying, Faye? Her lips twisted into a cruel smirk. Exactly what you think, dear. Once those brats are out of you, I'll make sure they stay right where they belong, with their real family. A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the sacred bond between mother and child before it could even form. You're insane, I breathed, my voice trembling with a potent mixture of fear and rage. They're my babies, Faye. You can't just take them away. Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. Watch me. You're nothing but an incubator, Margot, a means to an end. Once you've served your purpose, you'll be discarded like the worthless trash you are. Bile rose in my throat as I fought the urge to lash out, to claw and scratch until this vile woman understood the depth of my fury. But I knew such actions would only give her more ammunition, more justification for her twisted schemes. Instead, I forced myself to remain calm, to meet her icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. I won't let you do this, Faye. These are my children, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect them from your poisonous influence. Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. We'll see about that, she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fought back tears of rage and despair. How could I have been so blind, so naive to the true depths of Faye's depravity? But even as doubt crept in, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Not anymore. With shaking fingers, I reached for my phone, opening the camera app and beginning to document the evidence of Faye's abuse. The cutting remarks, the emotional manipulation, the thinly veiled threats. Every cruel word, every caustic glance captured and preserved for the day when I would finally strike back. As the days passed, the collection grew, a damning testament to the true nature of the woman I had once foolishly called family. And with each new entry, my resolve hardened, my desire for retribution burning brighter than ever before. I would not be cowed, not be silenced or pushed aside like some inconvenient obstacle. I was a mother, a force of nature, and I would stop at nothing to ensure the safety and happiness of my children. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious no matter the cost. Faye, step back. I've heard everything. Carson's voice roared as he burst through the door, his eyes blazing with fury. You have no right to threaten my wife. Faye's menacing glare faltered as Carson wrapped a protective arm around my shoulders, pulling me close to his chest. I clutched the damning evidence against Faye, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. I should have known better than to trust a manipulative snake like you, Carson spat, his words dripping with venom as he glared at his mother. Faye's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing into slits of rage. How dare you speak to me that way after everything I've sacrificed for this family? As Faye's vicious tongue unleashed on Carson, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger towards her for the emotional torment she had inflicted on me. Her cruel taunts and empty threats had left me questioning my self-worth as a woman, as a mother. Just as I was about to unleash my bottled-up rage, the doorbell rang, breaking the tension. As I opened the door, my heart sank as I saw the sympathetic gaze of our dear friend, who had been a shoulder to lean on during my darkest moments. "Faye, you have no right to make threats against my wife," she said, her voice laced with anger. "She is carrying my grandchildren, and I will not have you terrorize her any longer." Faye's menacing glare softened as she realized the gravity of her actions and the consequences it could bring. As she begrudgingly let go of her bitterness, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, knowing that her toxic influence would no longer affect our family. However, as Faye's demeanor changed, so did her perception of me. She realized that I was not the weak, helpless woman she had initially thought, but rather a strong, resilient individual who could stand up to her manipulative ways. As Faye begrudgingly accepted my strength, I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I had the ability to confront her and break free from her emotional hold. In that moment, I realized that Faye's actions were a reflection of her own insecurities and fears, rather than a personal attack against me. Her cruel words and empty threats were a desperate attempt to maintain control and assert her dominance. As I confronted Faye's fears, I felt a sense of pity for her, rather than anger. Her actions were a cry for attention and validation, which she sought through emotional manipulation. Ultimately, Faye's threats were a test of my resilience and strength of character. By standing firm in the face of her intimidation tactics, I proved that I was not easily swayed by her empty promises or hollow threats. In the end, Faye's actions only served to strengthen my resolve and determination to be a better person, a better mother, and a better daughter-in-law. This affair ends now, Carson. My voice rang out, clear and unwavering, as I threw the crumpled love letters onto the dining table before the astonished faces of our family. You won't control me anymore. Carson's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Beside him, Faye's expression contorted into a mask of rage, her hands clenching into tight fists. "How dare you bring this filth into my home?" she hissed, her gaze boring into me with a hatred I had never seen before. I met her glare with a steely resolve, emboldened by the knowledge that the truth was finally out in the open. "Your home? This is my home too, Faye. Or have you forgotten that I'm Carson's wife?" Harold, Faye's husband, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between the damning letters and his wife's furious countenance. "Faye, what is the meaning of this?" Before she could respond, Carson's sister, Allison, spoke up, her voice laced with disgust. "It means my dear brother has been unfaithful, father, to Margot, to this family." A heavy silence descended upon the room, thick with tension and unspoken accusations. I could feel the weight of their judgmental stares, but I refused to shrink away, to cower in the face of their scrutiny. "Well," I challenged, my gaze sweeping over the assembled family members, "does anyone else have anything to say?" Faye's lips curled into a sneer. "You're making a fool of yourself, Margot. Carson would never betray me like this." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Betray you? Is that what you think this is about, Faye? Open your eyes. Your son has been carrying on an affair behind my back, and you've been too blinded by your own twisted desires to see it." Carson flinched as if struck, his face flushing with shame. "Margot, please, let me explain." But I had no interest in his excuses, his feeble attempts at justification. "Explain what, Carson? How you lied to me, day after day, while you were off gallivanting with your mistress. Or maybe you'd like to explain why you allowed your vile mother to abuse and torment me, all in the name of keeping up appearances." Faye's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Watch your tone, girl. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I shot back, my voice rising with each syllable. "I have the bruises, the recordings, the proof of every vicious word and cruel taunt you've hurled at me over these past months." Harold's brow furrowed, his gaze shifting towards his wife with a newfound wariness. "Faye, is this true? Have you been mistreating Margot?" Before she could respond, I plowed ahead, determined to lay bare the full extent of their betrayal. It's all true, Harold. Every word. And it's not just Faye. Carson has been lying to us all, carrying on an affair right under our noses. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the scales finally falling from their eyes. Allison was the first to speak, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You bastard. How could you do this to Margot, to your own children?" Carson opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off with a sharp wave of my hand. "Save it, Carson. I'm done with your lies, your manipulation. From this moment on, you and your mother have no hold over me or my children. We're through." As the chaos erupted around me, with Faye and Carson desperately trying to regain control of the situation, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of their oppression had finally been broken, and I was free. Free to forge my own path, to build the life I deserved for myself and my babies. And as Harold and Allison rallied to my side, their support and solidarity a balm against the sting of betrayal, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the strength and resilience that had carried me through this darkest of storms. The war was won, and I had emerged victorious. "You played me for a fool, Faye." Harold's voice was cold, unyielding, as he stared down his wife, his eyes hard as flint. "All these years, and I never knew the true depths of your cruelty." Faye's lips twisted into a sneer, but I could see the fear flickering in her eyes as the full weight of her actions finally caught up to her. "Harold, please, you don't understand." "Don't I?" He cut her off, his tone sharp as a blade. "You abused my daughter-in-law, threatened to take her children from her. And for what? Some twisted sense of control?" Carson stepped forward, his face etched with desperation. "Dad, Mom, please, we can work through this, as a family." But Harold was having none of it, his gaze swinging towards his son with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. "And you, Carson, how could you let this happen? How could you stand by while your own wife was tormented, all for the sake of keeping up appearances?" Carson flinched as if struck, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I almost felt a pang of pity for him, caught in the crossfire of his own making. Almost. "I never meant for things to go this far," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I was just trying to protect Mom, to keep the family together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Protect her? From what, Carson? The consequences of her own actions?" Allison stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous fury as she glared at her brother and mother. "You're both pathetic. Margot has shown more strength and resilience in these past few months than either of you could ever hope to muster." A swell of gratitude washed over me at her words, her unwavering support a balm against the sting of betrayal. At least someone in this twisted family had their priorities straight. Faye's gaze swung towards me, her expression a mixture of hatred and begrudging respect. "So what now, Margot? You've had your little tantrum, exposed us all for the world to see. Are you satisfied?" I met her glare head-on, my spine straight and unyielding. "Satisfied? Hardly. I want you out of this house, Faye, out of our lives, until you can learn to treat me with the respect I deserve as Carson's wife and the mother of your grandchildren." A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of Harold's slow, deliberate clapping. "Well said, Margot," he murmured, his gaze never leaving his wife's face. "You heard her, Faye. Pack your things and leave. I won't have you poisoning this family any longer with your bitterness and manipulation." Faye's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her carefully cultivated facade of control crumbling before our very eyes. "Harold, you can't be serious." But the look in his eyes brooked no argument, no room for negotiation. For once, the iron-willed matriarch had met her match, and she had no choice but to bend to the collective will of those she had sought to dominate for so long. As she stormed from the room, her parting glare promising retribution, I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory, of hard-won triumph. The battle had been fought, the war won, and though the scars of betrayal still stung, I knew that I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Carson's pleading gaze found mine, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Margot, please, give me a chance to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, your love." I studied him for a long moment, weighing the sincerity of his words against the weight of his transgressions. In the end, only time would tell if our bond could truly be mended, if the wounds of his infidelity would ever fully heal. But as I felt the gentle flutters of life within me, a reminder of the precious souls I carried, I knew that I owed it to them, and to myself, to at least try. "We'll see, Carson," I murmured, my voice laced with a cautious hope. "We'll see. We've been through hell, but this new chapter is ours." Carson's voice was soft, remorseful, as he cradled one of our newborn twins, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I promise I'll spend every day making it up to you and our children." I studied his weary features, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face after the tumultuous events of the past few months. A part of me still seethed with anger, the memory of his betrayal a festering wound that refused to heal. And yet, as I gazed down at the tiny miracles swaddled in my arms, I knew that harboring that rage would only breed more toxicity, more pain. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, Carson," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "What you did, what your mother did, it nearly broke me." He flinched, but nodded, his expression one of resigned acceptance. "I know, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But please, Margot, let me prove myself to you, to our family. Give me a chance to be the husband, the father, that you all deserve." A gentle hand on my shoulder made me turn, and I found myself gazing into the kind eyes of Harold, my father-in-law and unexpected ally through this entire ordeal. "He's not the only one who needs to atone," Harold said, his voice laced with regret. "I should have seen what Faye was doing, put a stop to her cruelty before it went too far. For that, I am truly sorry, Margot." I felt a lump form in my throat at his words, touched by his humility and willingness to shoulder the blame. "Thank you, Harold. That means more than you know." Allison stepped forward, her expression one of fierce determination. "We're a family, Margot, and families stick together no matter what. Carson and Faye made mistakes, but we'll get through this together." A warm sense of gratitude washed over me as I looked around at the faces of those who had rallied to my side, who had chosen to stand against the toxic influences that had nearly torn us all apart. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that with their support, their unwavering loyalty, we could overcome any obstacle. "All right," I said, my voice strengthening with each syllable. "We'll take it one day at a time, rebuild what was broken. But know this, Carson, one more misstep, one more lie, and you're out. I won't let our children grow up in an environment of mistrust and manipulation, not again." Carson nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and renewed determination. "You have my word, Margot. From now on, it's just us, a family, united and strong." As I gazed down at the precious bundles in my arms, their tiny faces scrunched in peaceful slumber, I felt a surge of fierce love and protectiveness. These children, my children, would know only love, only safety and security. The shadows of the past would not be allowed to dim their futures, not while I still drew breath. Faye's specter lingered in the periphery, a constant reminder of the darkness we had overcome. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth and solidarity of those who truly mattered, I knew that her hold over us was broken, forever shattered by the resilience of our bond. A new chapter was beginning, one forged in the fires of hardship and betrayal, but tempered by the strength of our love and the unbreakable ties that bound us together as a family. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. We would face it united, our spirits unbowed, our resolve unshakable, for we were survivors, warriors in our own right, and no force on earth could ever break us again.